Chapter 564, Come Out and Die. Each day was spent reading or cultivating, then some time would occasionally be taken out in order to enter the rift of illusions to hone himself, familiarizing himself with the might of the inviolable after its upgrade. Life was peaceful. Such a life was highly coveted by many cultivators in the Cloud River realm. Having a stable cultivation environment meant not needing to travel around and face too many dangers, allowing for a smooth advancement in cultivation. Lu Yi was also content with such a life. Although he had been on the go since he started cultivating, he wouldn't refuse such a peaceful life if it weren't for his unavoidable circumstances. While cultivating in Arcane Glade couldn't compare to obtaining amulets, it had the advantage of stability. In terms of overall efficiency, it might even be faster than going around everywhere in search of amulets, especially since they weren't exactly things that one would come upon just because they set their minds on searching for it. It also depended on luck. On the third evening since the wolf pack disappeared, the sun had just set when Lu Yi, who was reading and cultivating, suddenly looked up and saw a dense group of figures outside the grand ward of the Arcane Glade. The wolf pack had returned. The imposing pack leader was covered in blood, and the other wolf mutants also had signs of injury, indicating that they had just experienced a great battle. However, what surprised Lu Yi was that the wolf pack had grown in size. Originally, this wolf pack consisted of just over 100 wolf mutants, but now, they had returned with more than 200, including some young wolf cubs that obviously weren't fully grown. Under the leadership of the pack leader, the wolf pack stopped outside the grand ward and waited quietly. Lu Yi waved the ward flag and opened a gap in the ward. Only then did the wolf pack pour into the Arcane Glade and look for suitable places to rest while the injured wolf mutants silently licked their wounds. The pack leader led some wolf mutants straight to Lu Yi. Under its guidance, the wolf mutants approached and spat out mutant cores they kept in their mouths. Lu Yi had already obtained more than a dozen mutant cores from the wolf pack previously, and he had no idea what the wolf pack had gone out to do. Not only did the pack increase in size, they also brought back nearly 50 mutant cores. This was clearly the wolf pack's show of gratitude and also the reward for Lu Yi's tattoos. It was a great deal. The materials Lu Yi bought from the Vault of Providence cost only a little over 1,000 contribution points, but the value of these mutant cores was worth more than that. He could even get as much as 10,000 if he were to sell them off to the Vault of Providence. Since the wolf pack knew to show gratitude, Lu Yi naturally wouldn't be stingy either. He immediately spent some contribution points to buy some healing pills from the Vault of Providence and distributed them to the injured wolf mutants together with each. After all, the future safety of the Arcane Glade would depend on this wolf pack. The reason Lu Yi chose to establish the Arcane Glade in Ameliorate Valley was so that he could leverage the strength of the wolf pack for protection. If it weren't for this wolf pack, he would never have set the Arcane Glade here. Although this place was hidden, it was also quite risky. If a powerful spirit beast attacked, he and Li Baxin alone might not be able to withstand it. Many of the new wolf mutants were somewhat resistant to being approached by Lu Yi, but under the intimidation of the pack leader, they could only obediently take the healing pills. Spirit beasts were very tenacious. As long as their injuries weren't too severe and they weren't instantly killed, there was generally no harm to their lives. After 2 or 3 days, the wolf pack had mostly recovered. The pack leader led its newly arrived members to see Lu Yi and to enlist his help in tattooing glyphs for them. Lu Yi naturally wouldn't refuse, as improving the strength of the wolf pack also meant increasing the Arcane Glade's defenses. Meanwhile, 15 kilometers away from Ameliorate Valley, Tan Sheng and his 2 companions were seated cross-legged in a cave, recuperating. Even if all 3 of them were in the 9th order, they appeared somewhat disheveled at the moment. They had been searching for Lu Yi's whereabouts in the vicinity for days, but unfortunately, the compass they had was far less effective than a tracking disc. They could only roughly determine Lu Yi's location but were unable to pinpoint it accurately. During their search, they occasionally encountered powerful spirit beasts, which led them into fierce battles. Just 2 hours ago, the 3 of them had joined forces to kill a spirit beast that was on par with a 9th order Cloud River realm cultivator. Though it wasn't without some gains, their main goal was still Lu Yi. No matter how many spirit beasts they killed, none of it meant anything if they couldn't find Lu Yi. He should be nearby. Let's rest for tonight and continue searching in the southeastern direction tomorrow, Tan Xing suggested. Neither Wei Kai nor Xia Liang had any objections. Even though they hadn't found any trace of Lu Yi yet, they could surmise that Lu Yi hadn't left this area based on the clues they found. So, as long as they continued searching, they would eventually find him. We have already thoroughly searched within this 50-kilometer radius several times, but we still haven't found anything. Yi is proficient in wards, so if he really did set up his arcane glade here, he would have set up many grand wards as well. During tomorrow's search, we mustn't overlook anything remotely suspicious, Wei Kai added. Naturally it should be so, Tan Xing nodded. However, his teleportation ward is going to be troublesome for us. Even if we did find him, we might not be able to kill him if he has set up the ward in advance. Inside the Carnage Coliseum, Tan Xing had been pursuing Lu Ye's trail with the tracking disc, but his movements were unpredictable, sometimes appearing in front, sometimes behind, teleporting 100 to 200 kilometers in an instant. At that time, Tan Xing didn't know what was happening and even suspected that there was something wrong with the tracking disc. Until the Carnage Coliseum closed, he racked his mind and asked around for information. Finally, he arrived at the conjecture that Yi might be able to set up teleportation wards. That was why he could instantly teleport 100 to 200 kilometers at a time, making it impossible to chase him down. When he reached this conclusion, he was genuinely surprised as teleportation wards were not something that ordinary ward mages could set up. Even a real Lake Realm ward cultivator would find it challenging to set up teleportation wards, let alone Lu Yi, who was only in the Cloud River realm. However, apart from teleportation wards, there was no other way to explain the strange situations he encountered. After putting his heart together with Wei Kai and Xia Liang and discussing this matter, he became even more certain about that conjecture. Because Wei Kai had also pursued Lu Yi before, and even though Lu Yi clearly entered a cave, he seemed to disappear without a trace when he went into search. There were only remnants of a shattered ward on the ground as if something had been destroyed. Later, the three of them carefully investigated the places where Lu Yi had appeared in the Carnage Coliseum and eventually found a teleportation ward that Lu Yi left behind, confirming their conjecture about his use of them. Xia Liang said, "I asked some of the elders in the sect about teleportation wards. There's no need to worry too much. Even if Yi can set them up, the coverage range of the teleportation wards he can create with his cultivation level won't be too large, and they have to be able to echo with each other in order to work. With spirit beasts rampant in the Grand Wild's peak, he definitely wouldn't dare to randomly set up the wards outside lest they be destroyed by passing spirit beasts. Instead of worrying about the teleportation wards, I'm more concerned about whether he has summoned the Divine Opportunity column in the Arcane Glade." As soon as that possibility was aired out, Tan Xing and Wei Kai fell silent. If it were anyone else, summoning the Divine Opportunity column might be unlikely as it was a costly endeavor, but for Yi, it was entirely possible. That guy was rich. He had recently obtained tens of millions of contribution points worth of resources from Thousand Demon Ridge, so definitely had a lot of contribution points at his disposal and could summon a Divine Opportunity column at any time. It was this exact method that he used to escape in the Carnage Coliseum before. Last time, he had the Golden Body token protecting him so no one could stop him. If not for that, he wouldn't have been able to escape then. So, it shouldn't be a big problem, Tan Xing said, perhaps trying to reassure himself. After a pause, he continued, even if he has already summoned a Divine Opportunity column and escaped realizing that the situation is unfavorable for him, at the very least, we can seize his Arcane Glade, and it wouldn't be a complete loss. In any case, let's first find his whereabouts. Even if he has summoned a Divine Opportunity column, and we can't kill him this time, there will always be next time. Their conversation came to an end and they quietly recovered their strength. At dawn the next day, they set off again and continued their search in the southeastern direction. Moments later, in the sky above Ameliorate Valley, 3 streaks of light passed by, Tan Xing and his companions respectively. They scanned their surroundings, but due to the concealment ward's effects, all they saw was a beautifully scenic valley without anything particularly noteworthy. Of course, the main reason was that none of the 3 of them were proficient in the way of wards. Otherwise, they may have been able to discern some clues. Just as they were about to pass by, Xia Liang suddenly halted and focused his gaze downwards. In the previously empty valley below, a wolf-like spirit beast had appeared at some point in time. Judging from its appearance, it was a young wolf cub that had yet to fully grow up. Sensing Xia Liang's unusual behavior, Tan Sheng and Wei Kei also quickly stopped their movements. Xia Liang. Tan Sheng looked over in confusion. Xia Liang remained silent, concentrating his vision as he continued to observe. At that moment, a distortion occurred in the empty space not far from the young wolf cub, causing a visible ripple. Following that, an imposing wolf mutant materialized out of thin air, walked up to the wolf cub, and grabbed it by its neck. Then, ignoring the cub's struggles, it carried the cub away. Another ripple appeared, and the wolf mutant vanished again. A concealment ward! Tan Sheng exclaimed, a hint of excitement appearing in his eyes. Both Xia Liang and Wei Kei grew excited as well. Wei Kei said, "This concealment ward has to be Ye's doing, no doubt about it. This is where he's set up his arcane glade." This truly was like wearing down iron shoes to find nothing, only to then chance upon it effortlessly. They had been searching for Lu Ye's whereabouts in the vicinity, but they had never been able to find him, yet they never expected that a fortuitous coincidence would allow them to discover the traces of a grand ward. Lu Yi himself had no idea that his ward had been exposed because of a playful young wolf cub. Mainly, he had no knowledge that Tan Sheng and his companions had still been searching for his trail to begin with. Previously, when he was being tracked with the tracking disc, he could sense their presence to some extent when they got close, but this time, he was completely oblivious to their presence. The severely limited version of the tracking disc was far inferior to the genuine one, but that also meant that Lu Yi couldn't sense it, so it had its pros and cons. After confirming the possibility that this was where Lu Yi was hiding, the three of them no longer hesitated. Xia Liang drew his saber, Wei Kei's spell technique surged, and Tan Sheng also brought out his own spirit artifact. The three Ninth Order Cloud River Realm experts simultaneously launched their attacks towards the valley below. Violent spell techniques surged, and massive blade lights swept through the area. Tan Sheng's angry roar echoed through the sky. Come out and meet your death." With his roar, a deafening boom resounded. At the outskirts of the arcane glade, a solid barrier suddenly materialized, ripples spreading across its surface as it blocked the incoming attack. Chapter 565. Before the formation was activated, they couldn't see much, but now that the three of them had activated the defensive formation, the situation in the valley below was exposed. A huge defensive formation covered half of the valley like an inverted bowl. The spirit energy flowing on the light curtain was condensed and didn't dissipate, showing the density of the world's spirit energy. If Tan Sheng and the others had only suspected that this might be Lu Ye's hiding place, then after seeing this defensive formation, their certainty increased by at least 70 to 80%. The strength of a defensive formation was directly related to the world's spirit energy. The denser the world's spirit energy, the stronger the defensive formation. The formation in front of them was so vast, but it still had such astonishing strength, indicating that the world's spirit energy here was definitely at the level of a Grade A spirit land. The reward for the first place on the hunting list was a Grade A spring spirit. However, because of the other formations, the three of them could only see the light curtain of the defensive formation, but couldn't see the scene inside. If they could see clearly, the three of them wouldn't be so aggressive. Because of this, more than 200 alarmed wolves in the spirit land all looked up at the three in the air. Some of them even lowered their bodies slightly and growled threateningly. The wolves weren't the only ones alarmed by the great momentum. Li Baxian, Feng Yuechun, and Giant Armor flashed out of their wooden houses and looked up. Glancing at the three figures in the air, Li Baxian was slightly surprised. Why are they here? Li Baxian naturally knew these three people. Tan Sheng and Xia Liang were both on the spirit stream list and had more or less interacted with Li Baxian and Feng Yuechun. Last time, he fought with them in the hunting ground, and in the end he relied on the trap formation set up by Lu Yi in advance to escape. These three people appeared in the sky above the spirit land and attacked the formation. It was obvious that they didn't come with good intentions. Listening to their shouts, it seemed that they were specifically looking for their junior brother. Where's junior brother? Li Baxian didn't see Lu Ye's figure, but he ran out. He said, Lu Yi is honing his blade technique in the Mirage realm. At this time, Li Baxian was quite helpless. Lu Yi could enter the Mirage realm with the help of breath fruit cores. This was something he knew. Recently, he and Feng Yuechan had occasionally used breath fruit cores to enter the Mirage realm to hone their fighting skills. As such, he knew that if Lu Yi was inside the Mirage realm, he wouldn't be able to perceive the situation outside, so he could only wait until he exited it. But if things continued like this, the spirit array would definitely collapse. Without anyone controlling it, the power it could display was limited, and with Tan Sheng's group of 3 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators attacking together, it wouldn't be long before they could break the spirit array. Where's the jade pendant? Yes. I'll go find it, Isilive. But the jades, Li Baxian took it, poured his spiritual energy into it, and after familiarizing himself with it, began to mobilize the surrounding world energy to control the spirit array. In this situation, Li Baxian wasn't worried about Tan Sheng's group coming in. Although they weren't Tan Sheng's group's opponents, there were more than 300 monster wolves in the spirit land. If Tan Sheng's group really came in, they wouldn't have a good ending. However, before Lu Yi exited the Mirage realm, Yang Kai couldn't let Tan Sheng's group enter the spirit land. Otherwise, if a chaotic battle broke out, Lu Yi would be injured. So, the best way now was to stall for time and wait for Lu Yi to exit the Mirage realm. As soon as Yang Kai took control of the spirit array, Tan Sheng and the others immediately noticed. As a result, the power of the three's attacks became more and more fierce. Tan Sheng even shouted, Lu Yi, give up. Unless you can summon the Heaven's Fate Pillar again, this place will be your burial ground. As he spoke, he attacked wildly, causing ripples to appear on the spirit array's light curtain. There was no response from the spirit array, but the more it was like this, the more certain Tan Sheng and the others were that Lu Yi was inside. If it were someone else, they would have just stood up and explained the situation, but because Lu Yi was inside the spirit array, he didn't dare to show himself easily. Moreover, they had tracked Lu Ye's whereabouts to this point, and it just so happened that there was a Grade A spirit land and a spirit array of such scale here. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? Spiritual energy surged violently, and the light screen flickered incessantly. Tan Sheng and the other two were secretly shocked. This protective array was truly powerful. Even with the three of them joining forces, they were still unable to break it. However, even if they didn't break the spirit array, it was still quite effective because the light curtain of the spirit array was obviously dimmer than before. At this rate, they would be able to break the spirit array sooner or later. At that time, they could directly attack the root of the problem. Attack together! Xia Liang roared as he drew his saber. Who knew if Lu Yi would summon the Heaven's Fate Pillar, so the sooner they broke the spirit array, the better. As his long saber fell, Wei Kei's spell followed closely behind. Tan Sheng attacked as well, and one attack after another landed on the same spot of the formation. The three of them worked together, and their coordination was flawless. The light screen of the formation that was attacked flickered repeatedly. Inside the spirit land, the helpless look on Li Baxian's face grew stronger. Although he tried his best to maintain the operation of the spirit array, he wasn't a spirit array cultivator after all, and the spirit array didn't come from him, so there was a limit to what he could do. At most, he could mobilize more energy to maintain the spirit array's position. Thinking about it, he decided that he could only let these three reckless fellows in and let the monster wolf deal with them. Just as he was thinking this, Lu Ye's voice suddenly sounded in his ear. What's going on? Li Baxian turned his head and saw Lu Yi standing beside him, looking up at the sky and exclaiming, Little junior brother, you're finally awake. Lu Yi also saw Tan Sheng's group of three baring their fangs and brandishing their claws at this moment and couldn't help showing a strange expression. How did these three find me? Moreover, the three of them actually found me together. His first thought was that the secret technique of the tracing plate was still in effect. but thinking about it carefully, it didn't make sense. Since he left the hunting ground and returned to the 9 regions, there were no traces of the secret technique planted on his body, so it didn't make sense for it to still be in effect after such a long time. But these 3 couldn't have found this place for no reason. Although he didn't know what method they used, it was obvious that they used a special spirit tool similar to the tracing plate. The enemy had found him and was attacking the spirit array he had set up, so this battle was naturally unavoidable. Lu Yi turned his head and saw that all the wolves were looking up at the sky. Many of the monster wolves had already been provoked and were baring their teeth on the spot. As if sensing Lu Yi's gaze, the head wolf somewhere in the wolf pack turned its head and looked at Lu Yi. The head wolf nodded slightly. Lu Yi made up his mind. He had trained his soldiers for 1,000 days to use them in a single moment. It was undoubtedly a wise decision to use the demon wolves as the strongest defensive force in the spiritual land. Although the wolf pack had initially stayed here because of the giant armor, Lu Yi and the wolf pack had become extremely harmonious over the past few days. Now that the enemy had come knocking on their door, the wolf pack would definitely not sit idly by. Taking the jade pendant of the spirit array from Li Baxian, Lu Yi poured his spiritual power into it and adjusted the power of the spirit array. He said, "Fourth senior brother, take senior sister Feng in giant armor to this position and wait." Saying so, he threw out a spirit array flag and it flew into the distance. The spirit array he had set up in the spiritual land was not just a defensive and concealment spirit array. The defensive power of the spiritual land itself was definitely not limited to the wolf pack. The power of the wolf pack could be borrowed, but he had never completely relied on it. Li Baxian nodded and immediately led Feng Yuechan and giant armor in the direction of the spirit array flag. After a short while, following Lu Ye's actions, the 3 of them concealed themselves. Yi went underground and waited for an opportunity to move, while Hupa jumped on Lu Ye's shoulder and waited. Lu Yi moved his spiritual power and the spirit array changed. At the same time, a light crack came from the sky, like a mirror being shattered. A gap was broken in the tight spirit array. The 3 figures entered in a line, accompanied by Tan Sheng's carefree laughter. "Lu Ye, your time of death has come." His laughter came to an abrupt stop as if someone had grabbed him by the neck. The smile on Tan Sheng's face suddenly stiffened. Beside him, Wei Kei and Xia Liang were shocked. The 3 pairs of eyes stared at the 200 or so monster wolves below, their expressions gradually turning serious. Although they had seen traces of monster beasts entering and exiting this place before, and it was because of that scene that they were certain there was a spirit array covering this place, none of them had expected so many monster beasts to have gathered in this valley. Looking at the scale, it was a wolf pack. Lu Ye, whom they had yearned for day and night, was standing below, coexisting peacefully with the wolf pack. The monster wolves looked at them with eyes full of savagery. What was going on? Tan Sheng and the other 2 were dumbfounded by the scene before them. They had thought that the biggest problem they would face after breaking through the defensive array would be Lu Yi escaping with the help of a teleportation array or using the Pillar of Heaven's fate to escape. But now, it seemed that the development of the situation was completely different from what they had expected. Lu Yi showed no signs of escaping, but the 3 of them had accidentally fallen into a trap. What kind of spirit array was this? This was simply a wolf's den. How could Lu Yi have such great ability to subdue such a wolf pack? Retreat! Xia Liang was the first to react, immediately urging his body to retreat through the gap they had come in from. However, as Lu Yi waved the array flag in his hand, the protective array began to twist and change. In the blink of an eye, it had been replaced by a giant trapping array. The original opening had also disappeared without a trace. Xia Liang slammed into the light curtain of the trapping array, unable to escape unless he had the ability to break the trapping array again. Lu Yi had the protection of such a pack of wolves, so he had nothing to fear. The reason why he didn't let them in immediately was to numb them. This was a well-prepared trap. Realizing this, Tan Sheng and the other 2's expressions turned ugly. Wei Kei suddenly spoke up, "Don't panic, the 2 of you. These monster wolves don't seem to have the ability to fly. As long as we don't fall, they can't do anything to us." Chapter 566. Tan Sheng and Xiao Yang's hearts calmed down a little. When they saw so many monster wolves just now, they were shocked and their minds were in a mess, so they didn't think about it. Now, it seemed that these monster wolves really didn't have the ability to fly. As such, the threat to them was naturally reduced. Even if they had a certain degree of anti-air ability, as long as the three of them maintained flight, they wouldn't be in too much danger. On the contrary, the three of them could rely on their nimble bodies and the foundation of Cloud River Realm cultivators to slowly nibble away at these monster wolves. Of course, their main goal was still Lu Yi. As long as they could kill Lu Yi, they could completely ignore the monster wolves. Just as they were thinking this, Lu Yi suddenly waved the array flag in his hand and softly uttered a word that made their hair stand on end. Sky restriction. As his voice fell, the array covering the spirit land suddenly changed. If it was more than a month ago, Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to set up a sky restriction array, but last time, he obtained 4 spirit inscriptions from the talent tree. Moreover, all 4 spirit inscriptions were related to spirit arrays, and one of them was the sky restriction array. If he wanted the wolf pack to display enough power, the sky restriction array was undoubtedly necessary. When the array changed, Tan Sheng and the other 2 who were flying in the air suddenly felt an invisible mountain pressing down on them. Caught off guard, the 3 of them fell down, each of them baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, looking extremely miserable. Wolf howls rang out as many monster wolves opened their mouths and spat out light green wind blades, sweeping towards the 3 of them. Monster wolves really didn't have the ability to fly, but they did have a certain degree of anti-air ability. These wind blades that could be spat out from their mouths were a kind of innate demonic skill that they were born with. Not only monster wolves, but most monster beasts also had this ability. Without this ability, they wouldn't have been able to survive in this dangerous Taimang Mountains. Of course, compared to their sharp claws and fangs, these wind blade-like attacks were much weaker and less agile. But they had the advantage of numbers. The dense wind blades flew towards Tan Sheng and the other 2, causing their bodies to flicker wildly. As expected of Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators, even if they suddenly encountered such an unforeseen event, they were still able to defend themselves. Although they were in a sorry state under the attack of so many wind blades, they were still able to defend themselves well. As the 3 of them continued to fall, the pressure on their bodies rapidly decreased. This was the case with the Forbidden Flight Array. Within the range of the array, the higher one flew, the greater the pressure. If one was on the ground, one would not feel any pressure at all. The 3 of them hurriedly stabilized themselves after reaching a height of 10 meters above the ground. At this height, the pressure from the Forbidden Flight Array was negligible. In the end, it was still because Lu Ye's attainments in the Tao of formations were insufficient. Otherwise, not to mention 30 feet, they could forget about flying even if they were only 30 feet. Even though they'd escaped the misfortune of falling down in a sorry state, the 3 of them didn't have the slightest trace of joy on their faces. Instead, they seemed even more solemn because numerous demon wolves had already surrounded them from all directions. As the wolf howls rose and fell, the demon wolves took the initiative to launch an attack. One after another, huge figures leaped up and pounced towards the 3 of them. Looking from afar, the attacks of the demon wolves were like a torrential downpour, beating Tan Sheng and the other 2 into an extremely sorry state. The 3 of them formed a triangle and used their spirit tools to block the attacking demon wolves. From time to time, a demon wolf would be injured and blood would splatter. Although the demon wolves had rough skin and thick flesh, the strength of Tan Sheng and the other 2 was right there. If they didn't rely on their advantage in numbers to make them flustered, a single demon wolf, even if it was a leader, would not be their opponent. The methods that cultivators could use were ultimately much stronger than those of demon beasts. While the battle was in full swing, Lu Yi only stood calmly in the distance, quietly watching. Occasionally, he would raise his hand to release a spirit tool or a spirit tool to distract Tan Sheng and the others. Tan Sheng and the other 2 were so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. They had gone deep into Great Mang Mountain these days, eating and sleeping in the open, and had encountered many obstacles along the way. After finally finding Lu Ye with great difficulty, They never thought that they would be greeted with such a situation. The huge wolf pack launched continuous attacks on them, but the person they were looking for was standing on the side and watching the show. It was simply unreasonable. They really couldn't understand how this Lu Ye could have such good luck to be able to directly subdue a wolf pack for his own use. If not for the wolf pack's obstruction, the three of them could casually make a move and behead him. In the midst of the fierce battle, the three of them sensed that something was not quite right. When some demon wolves pounced over to bite, a trace of light clearly flashed across their mouths. There were even more demon wolves that suddenly had a defensive spirit pattern appear on their backs when they were attacked. Looking carefully, they indeed saw that many demon wolves had a golden arrow-like mark on their mouths. Lu Ye has tattooed these beasts. Xia Liang shouted in a low voice. Tan Sheng and Wei Ke were both shocked. Although they had long known that Lu Yi had considerable attainments in the array Dao, they never knew that he actually had advanced in the Dao of tattooing. To be able to tattoo demon beasts, it undoubtedly explained a lot of things. This guy was going against the heavens. How did he know everything? Over here, the fierce battle continued without end. Unable to take down the three for a long time, the alpha wolf seemed to be somewhat angry. Standing outside the battlefield, it raised its head to the sky and let out a long howl. In the next instant, the wolf pack's attacks suddenly became more concentrated. Tan Sheng and the others' mouths were filled with bitterness as they ate coptis. The more they ate, the worse the situation became. If this continued, forget about killing Lu Yi, it would be difficult to guarantee that they would be able to escape unscathed. They couldn't delay any longer. Fighting to the death with the wolf pack was undoubtedly very unwise. From beginning to end, they only had one goal. Wei Ke kill Lu Ye. As Xia Liang roared, the long saber in his hand blossomed with a dazzling light. His entire body's spiritual energy boiled. Tan Sheng sensed his intentions and hurriedly urged his own strength to cooperate. Violent spiritual energy swept out. With the combined strength of the two, they forcibly tore a gap in the wolf pack's encirclement. From that gap, a saber light like a waterfall slashed towards Lu Yi. The mountain coiling saber was unsheathed and blood qi gathered in his right arm. With a flash of light, Lu Ye's figure was sent flying. With his fourth-order cultivation, taking a ninth-order cultivator's saber light head-on was still lacking. This blow caused the blood in his chest to roil and his saber-wielding right arm to become somewhat numb. The saber light shattered, and immediately after, Wei Ke's figure pounced over. His face was filled with a ferocious look as spirit qi surged from his body, revealing his murderous intent. Tan Sheng and Xia Liang had teamed up to create this opportunity for him, so he couldn't let them down. Seeing Lu Ye's figure fly backwards, Wei Ke raised his hand and blasted a spell technique towards Lu Yi. At the same time, his figure moved like a shadow as he opened his hand and condensed spirit qi in his palm, making it seem as if he wanted to kill Lu Yi. Lu Yi formed a defensive barrier in front of him and blocked the spell technique's attack, but when it shattered, his figure was sent flying even further away. Immediately afterwards, under Wei Ke's watchful gaze, Lu Ye's body seemed to have crashed into a transparent membrane, and with a ripple he disappeared. Another spirit array? Wei Ke was startled, but when he heard the howling of wolves behind him, he grit his teeth and hurriedly gave chase. Although he wasn't sure what kind of spirit array Lu Yi had arranged in front of him, it wasn't easy for him to rush out of the encirclement of the wolves. If he couldn't capture Lu Yi quickly, all his previous efforts would have been in vain. Without Tan Sheng and Xia Liang by his side, his situation would be even worse. So, even if he knew it wasn't wise to pursue, Wei Ke had no choice but to bite the bullet and give chase. His body seemed to have broken through a barrier and Wei Ke felt himself being enveloped by a spirit array, but when he looked around, he didn't see Lu Ye's figure. Instead, a thick fog suddenly appeared around him. The thick fog spread extremely quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it became so dark that he couldn't even see his fingers in front of him. What shocked Wei Ke even more was that there were colorful lights constantly shuttling back and forth in this thick fog. As these lights changed, inexplicable shadows flashed across his vision from time to time. An illusion array. Wei Kei immediately knew what kind of spirit array he had fallen into, and a chill ran from head to toe as he cursed inwardly. What the hell is this Lu Ye? Has his attainments in the Tao of spirit arrays reached such a high level? Since they had broken into the spirit land, they had experienced a defensive spirit array, an entrapment spirit array, a flight restriction spirit array, and now an illusion array, and this was only what he had seen. There must be many more he hadn't seen. Could a cultivator at the Cloud River tier really set up so many profound formations? But on second thought, that guy could even arrange a transmission array, so what couldn't he arrange? Thinking so, Wei Kei didn't dare to stay in place and immediately urged his body to rush out of the range of the spirit array. This was undoubtedly the wisest response. After all, the range of the spirit array was limited, so as long as he kept running in one direction, he would eventually be able to escape. The speed of a ninth-order cultivator was extremely fast, and Wei Kei was using his full strength, so it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was as fast as lightning. However, as time passed, a scene that made him feel despair appeared. No matter how fast he ran, no matter how hard he tried, he was always wrapped in fog, unable to escape from the shroud of the spirit array. Somewhere in the spirit array, following Wei Kei's movements, Lu Yi was constantly adjusting the spirit array. This was the first time he had observed someone break into the illusion array, so he naturally wanted to summarize his experience and see how effective this spirit array was. For the time being, the effect was quite good. The illusion array constructed with the fog and lightning spirit crests as its core seemed to have the effect of confusing the enemy's perception, so even though Wei Kei thought he was running in one direction, in fact, under Lu Ye's adjustments, he had been running in circles inside the spirit array without being aware of it. Inside the spirit array, Wei Kei's forehead was covered in sweat, and his expression was solemn. He had also noticed some clues. Logically speaking, inside such a spirit array, everything one saw was illusory. What one saw might not be true, but one's perception would never be false. But now, it seemed that there was something wrong with his perception, otherwise, there was no reason he couldn't escape. Chapter 567. Trapped in the illusion array, Wei Kei was shocked but not panicked. After all, he was a 9th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, while Lu Yi, a 4th-order cultivator, could only trap him and not kill him. The only thing he could do now was to escape from here as quickly as possible. Although Tan Sheng and Xiao Yang were stronger than him, 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. They were definitely not the opponents of the wolf pack, so it was unrealistic for them to expect him to kill Lu Yi quickly. If he stayed here for too long, no matter what happened to Tan Sheng and Xiao Yang, he would not have a good end. But how can I escape from here? Wei Kei was annoyed and gritted his teeth as he shouted, "Lu Yi, is this all you've got? Come out and fight if you have the guts." He was just a 9th-order cultivator. If he had any other choice, he would have been embarrassed to shout such words at a 4th-order cultivator. Of course, he was just shouting and didn't think it would have any effect. It was the mixed aura of a cultivator's spiritual energy and vitality. It was right in front of him. As long as Lu Yi was in his right mind, he would definitely not show himself in front of him. However, to Wei Kei's surprise, just as he finished speaking, he suddenly felt a different aura flowing not far in front of him. Wei Kei didn't think too much about it and kept moving forward until a tall silhouette appeared in the fog in front of him. Only then did he realize that something was wrong. Lu Ye's figure can't be so tall, right? Seduso CC first. Wei Kei was overjoyed. He raised his hand and sent out a golden arc towards the front. At the same time, he rushed forward, ready to take down Lu Yi. The golden arc of lightning struck the target with a dull thud. It felt as if his spell technique had struck some kind of indestructible barrier. What is this? Is this an illusion? As the dense fog surged, a huge fan-like hand reached out and grabbed at Wei Kei's neck. The speed of the hand wasn't fast, but it was accompanied by an aura that could cover the sky and cover the earth. Even if Wei Kei was a 9th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, he could not help but have an illusion that once he was grabbed by this hand, it would be difficult for him to escape. However, before he could stand firm, the sound of swords rang out one after another. At the same time, he felt a tingling pain all over his body. Flying sword. Wei Kei's expression changed abruptly as he frantically activated his spiritual energy to protect himself. Wei Kei was at a loss for a moment. Spiritual energy surged around his body and a golden arrow shot forward. It hit the giant hand, and with a bang, the spell exploded. The giant hand paused for a moment, but it quickly grabbed down at an even faster speed. Wei Kei's hair stood on end as he quickly retreated. This was not the end of it. Just as Wei Kei was wondering what was going on, another figure flashed past him. The fiery red blade slashed down, and the violent slash shattered his protective spiritual power. The figure disappeared in a flash, and before Wei Kei could counterattack, the other party had already disappeared, leaving only a bloody wound on his body. In the next instant, flying swords slashed at him from all directions, causing the spiritual light on his body to flicker incessantly, and his protective spiritual energy quickly dimmed. Another spell struck him from the side, causing his body to tremble violently. He was beaten silly. He thought he only needed to deal with the Fourth Order Liu Yi, but from the various changes just now, it seemed there was more than one Liu Yi in this illusion array. Wei Kei exclaimed as the burly figure in front of him pressed down on him like a mountain and punched out. With a bang, Wei Kei's body was sent flying and he landed awkwardly. He hurriedly got up and looked around blankly, but there was no one in front of him except for the rolling fog and colorful ribbons of light. The sword cultivator. It was Li Baxian. Wei Kei immediately reacted. They had already guessed that Liu Yi would invite Li Baxian to enter the spiritual land. However, when they entered the spiritual land, they only saw Liu Yi and no one else. At that time, they didn't think too much about it. But now, it seems that Liu Yi wasn't the only one in the spiritual land. In that short period of time, there were 4 people who attacked him, and in addition to Liu Yi, there were 3 others. One was a burly body cultivator, one was a sword cultivator, and one was a magic cultivator. As for the body cultivator, Wei Kei had no clue. He assumed Liu Yi had found a helper from somewhere. Thinking of this, Wei Kei's heart sank to the bottom. The sword cultivator who attacked him was undoubtedly Li Baxian, and his cultivation level corresponded as well. The magic cultivator was Feng Yuechan, and the two of them had always been inseparable. Dong dong dong, heavy footsteps came from the side again, as if a huge monster was running. When Wei Kei turned his head to look, he saw the burly figure appear again. It broke through the fog and rushed right in front of him like a bolt of lightning, crashing into him. Trapped in the illusory array, he didn't feel much danger because Liu Yi couldn't do anything to him. If the other party really wanted to kill him, he could wait for an opportunity to counterattack. But now he had to face not only Liu Yi, but also 3 other people. Coupled with the illusory array, Wei Kei could already smell the scent of death. In addition to the flying swords, there were also some spells that came from nowhere. He staggered and his qi and blood surged. Behind him, a fierce murderous aura surged. Wei Kei hurriedly turned around and saw a fiery red blade of light. Wei Kei hurriedly dodged and cast a spell at the other party. The spell landed on the man's body, but the burly figure only paused for a moment. There was no trace of injury at all. While Wei Kei's attention was distracted, the sound of swords rang out again. Then, Wei Kei felt himself being enveloped by a storm of attacks. Hurriedly landing, Wei Kei looked panicked and shouted, "Brother Xia, Brother Tan, save me." He didn't expect that chasing Liu Yi would put him in prison. The blade fell, accompanied by Wei Kei's cry of alarm, and a huge wound appeared on his chest, blood spilling out. The burly figure had already closed in on Wei Quebec. It seemed to be a clumsy punch, but it contained an extremely terrifying force. Wei Kei's entire body flew out like a ragged sack. His body was in midair, and he continuously spat out blood. He was like a fish on a chopping board, and the enemy would come and cut him from time to time. In such a situation, if he didn't ask for help, he could only wait for death. The people besieging him weren't very strong. All of them were 4th or 5th order cultivators. If it was a normal environment, Wei Kei would be able to deal with them easily even if he was alone. But inside the illusion array, it was difficult for him to exert his strength. On the contrary, the other party was like a fish in water, attacking from time to time and then running away, leaving him no room to fight back. Even so, the two of them were struggling to cope with the constant attacks of the wolf pack. They were hoping that Wei Kai could succeed as soon as possible. This way, as long as they killed Lu Yi and obtained the array jade slip, they could retreat calmly. But after waiting and waiting, they heard Wei Kai's cry for help. A shrill cry rang out. In the spirit land, Tan Sheng and Xiao Liang, who were fighting with the wolf pack, both changed their expressions. They were in an extremely bad situation at the moment. There were too many monster wolves. If it weren't for their profound foundation, an ordinary ninth-order cultivator would have been unable to hold on. What's going on? Tan Sheng and Xiao Liang were dumbfounded. How could they not be shocked? While he was busy, he took a moment to look at the source of the sound. He saw that the fog was rolling and surging, covering a large area. Wei Kai and Lu Ye's figures were nowhere to be seen. There were only flashes of light from time to time in the fog, mixed with Wei Kai's cries and screams. Feeling annoyed, they should have brought more people with them. They thought that with 3 ninth-order cultivators working together, as long as they found Lu Yi, the other party wouldn't be able to do anything, but who knew things would develop like this? After committing suicide and entering the spirit land, everything they encountered was unexpected, making it difficult for them to adapt. Although they didn't know what happened to Wei Kai, they could infer from the sounds coming from there that he was in a bad situation. In this situation, let alone killing Lu Yi, whether or not they could escape unscathed was a problem. No matter what happened to Wei Kai, it was related to Lu Yi. Once Wei Kai died, Lu Yi would free himself and the two of them would not have a good end. So, leaving quickly was the most important thing. In the fierce battle, Tan Sheng and Xiao Liang looked at each other, and although there was no communication, they could see each other's thoughts. They couldn't stay here for long. In such a situation, it was no longer realistic for them to break the spirit array with their own strength. Besieged by the wolf pack, they could only protect themselves at the moment, so if they really wanted to break the spirit array, they would have to borrow the power of the wolf pack and let the aftermath of their battle bombard the spirit array. Although this method was less efficient, it was better than waiting for death here. But now that the spirit land was surrounded by a spirit array, if they wanted to leave, they had to break the spirit array first. As for whether to save Wei Kai or not, it was no longer within the scope of their consideration. The premise of saving someone was to protect themselves first. If they couldn't even protect themselves, how could they save someone? Making up their mind, the two tacitly cooperated and moved the battlefield to the edge of the spirit array. He didn't know where the enemy was hiding, but he knew that as long as he showed a flaw, he would be greeted by a storm of attacks. In less than a stick of incense worth of time, he had 7 or 8 wounds on his body, the most serious of which was the one on his abdomen, where a flying sword had pierced through his body. Blood kept flowing out and his face twisted in pain. So even if he knew that what he was doing was like drinking poison to quench his thirst, he couldn't stop because he would die faster if he stopped. In order to break the spirit array as soon as possible, the two of them spared no effort, which led to more injuries on their bodies, making them look extremely miserable. Time passed. In the psychedelic array, Wei Kai's hair was disheveled, and his body was covered in wounds and blood. He crazily urged his spiritual power and cast powerful spells, bombarding them aimlessly in all directions. This was very effective. At the very least, no one would sneak up on him while he was casting spells. Chapter 568. Inside the illusion array, Wei Kai didn't hesitate to use his secret techniques in order to protect himself. Even if he was a 9th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, he couldn't hold on for long. The spiritual power in his body flowed out like a flood from a broken dam, and the bombardment of spells caused a buzzing sound to ring out in all directions. Although he opened his mouth to call for help, Tan Sheng and Xiao Liang did not come. He knew that the two of them were probably in a bad situation, otherwise, they would not have left him alone. The smell of blood lingered at the tip of his nose and the pain all over his body made him sweat profusely. The aura of death was like a sea, drowning him. He never expected that just coming to kill Lu Yi would put him in such a dangerous situation. If he had known, he wouldn't have agreed to accompany Tanxing here. However, regret was useless at this moment. In such an environment, he couldn't see any hope of escaping. Just as he was thinking this, a sudden change occurred. The formation that had been shrouding the area suddenly changed. Then, the surrounding fog and the colorful illusions quickly dissipated. Wei Kai was stunned for a moment, then ecstatic. He had actually unintentionally broken this illusion array. Heaven never bars one's way out. When the fog dissipated, he saw several figures gathered not far away from him. Among them were Li Baxian, Feng Yuchan, and Lu Yi. In addition, there was a burly body cultivator wearing linen clothes with bulging muscles. Lu Yi's eyes flashed with a look of surprise. He obviously didn't expect that he would be able to break the array here. Lu Yi really didn't expect this. The illusion array was arranged by him with the help of array flags. Unlike the protection array and entrapment array, it didn't have much defensive ability, so if the array flags were destroyed, it would be difficult to maintain it. Just now, Wei Kai had launched a series of aimless frenzied attacks. Coincidentally, he had hit one of the array flags, which had led to the collapse of the psychedelic array. It could only be said that this guy's luck was really good. After breaking the array and seeing the real bodies of Lu Yi and the others, Wei Kai immediately roared, "Lu Yi!" How terrified he was just now was how angry he was now. He was a dignified 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator, yet he had been attacked by a few 4th or 5th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators without being able to fight back. He had even been forced to call for help from his companions. This undoubtedly made him lose a lot of face. As he roared, a ferocious spell blasted towards Lu Yi. Before Lu Yi could move, the giant armor had already arrived. There was a flash of spiritual light in front of it, blocking the spell. The price it had to pay was only to be forced back a few steps, but it was completely unscathed. This scene caused Wei Kai's eyelids to twitch. He was secretly shocked at the strength of this body cultivator's physique. Previously, he had been in the fog, so he hadn't been able to clearly feel the power of the giant armor. Now that he saw with his own eyes that a 4th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator had easily blocked his spirit art, he was truly shocked. There was a difference of 5 minor levels between their cultivations. Logically speaking, even if the other party was an individual cultivator, he should not have been able to withstand that attack. But in reality, not only did the other party withstand it, he did not even have much of a reaction. Just as he was about to attack again, an inexplicable sense of weakness suddenly surged, causing Wei Kai to stagger. He had consumed too much of his strength before, and his injuries were not light. How could he fight again at this moment? Sword cries rang out as Li Baxian's body surged with light and a series of flying swords shot towards Wei Quebec. Feng Yuchan was standing beside him, her hands constantly forming seals as she cast a series of exquisite spirit arts towards Wei Quebec. Wei Kai's face changed as he hurriedly pushed his almost exhausted spirit chi to protect himself. Asterisk dang dang dang. Asterisk the giant armor took large strides forward, leaping up and down between the flying swords and spirit arts. It quickly closed the distance between it and Wei Kai, carrying with it the pressure of a mountain. When it got close, it took advantage of the fact that Wei Kai was entangled by the flying swords and spirit arts to kick him. Feeling the terrifying power of this kick, Wei Kai's pupils shrank. In this situation, he would rather be cut by Li Baxian's flying swords or hit by Feng Yuchan's spirit arts than let the giant armor kick him. If this kick connected, he would explode into a bloody mist in an instant. At this critical moment of life and death, his mind was tense to the extreme, and he actually displayed a speed that did not belong to a magic cultivator. While blocking the flying sword and the spell attack, he narrowly avoided the kick that the giant armor had launched. However, before he could breathe a sigh of relief, a figure had already rushed out from behind the giant armor's burly figure. It was Lu Yi. A fiery red blade flashed, reflecting the panic on Wei Kai's face. Facing this blade coming down from above, he had no room to dodge. The flash. The blade slashed down and broke through Wei Kai's spirit arts protection, leaving a huge wound from his shoulder blade to his waist. Through the wound, one could vaguely see his squirming organs. The powerful impact sent Wei Kai's figure flying backwards, spitting out blood from his mouth. He barely managed to stabilize his body. His vision was blood red, stars were flying in front of his eyes, and the spirit arts river in his body was in chaos. He had already consumed a great deal of his spirit arts, and his injuries were not light. Now that he had suffered such a heavy blow, he was like an oil lamp that had run out of oil. Seeing that Lu Yi wasn't going to let him off, dragging his blazing long blade towards him, Wei Kai couldn't help but be ruthless. His foundation was indeed not as good as Tan Sheng's or Xia Liang's, but he had cultivated to the 9th Order Cloud River realm and had experienced many life and death crises over the years, so he did not lack the courage to go all out against his enemy. He knew in his heart that he was doomed this time and secretly regretted being blinded by greed, but what was the use of regret now? However, even if he died, he would not let his enemy off so easily. Raising his hand, Wei Kai reached into his storage bag and pulled out something. It was an arrow, a broken one at that. Judging from its appearance, this arrow had been lost for many years, so Wei Kai had no idea where he had obtained it. However, something that could be taken out at this time was undoubtedly Wei Kai's most precious treasure and his final trump card. Biting the tip of his tongue, Wei Kai sprayed a mist of blood onto the broken arrow, causing it to immediately release a brilliant light. At the same time, an extremely dangerous aura filled the air. Lu Yi, who was rushing towards him with his blade, immediately stopped and decisively retreated. At this moment, he felt a great sense of danger in his heart and stared at the broken arrow in Wei Kai's hand, knowing full well that the danger was coming from this broken arrow. Wei Kai's spirit qi madly surged into the broken arrow, causing it to shine as brightly as the sun. With a mouth full of blood, Wei Kai grinned, "Lu Yi, even if I die, you'll be buried with me." Both Li Baxian and Feng Yuchan realized that the situation had taken a turn for the worse. This broken arrow was obviously a treasure that surpassed a spirit artifact or even an artifact. Such a treasure, even if damaged, was bound to be extremely powerful. Once Wei Kai successfully summoned it, no one knew what kind of damage it would cause. Therefore, the two of them madly urged their spirit qi, wanting to kill Wei Kai before he could summon this treasure. However, the difference in their cultivation was obvious. Even if the two of them joined forces, they could only cause Wei Kai's body to tremble violently and his blood to splatter, unable to take his life for the time being. In less than 3 breaths, the broken arrow in Wei Kai's hand suddenly turned into a stream of light and shot out like lightning. At this moment, all the hair on Lu Ye's body stood on end as a sense of danger he had never felt before arose in his heart. Without even thinking about it, he rushed in a certain direction, wanting to increase the distance between him and Wei Quebec. However, the stream of light was extremely fast and arrived in front of him in almost the blink of an eye. Crouching on Lu Ye's shoulder, Hupo also sensed the danger and arched his back on Lu Ye's shoulder, growling in a low voice as his qi and blood collided with Lu Ye's. Lu Yi raised his blade and the flesh on his right arm instantly bulged. The flash. Consecutive slashes. A series of explosions rang out. To an outsider, this was just the sound of a single slash, but in truth, Lu Yi had slashed out 5 times in an extremely short period of time. With each slash, Wei Kai's body trembled as if he had been struck by a mountain saber. Blood gushed from his mouth and his face paled at a visible rate. These slashes with all his strength were not without effect. The stream of light in front of him paused for a moment, and it was this fleeting opportunity that allowed Lu Yi to fall to the ground. The stream of light brushed past the tip of his nose, stirring up a gust of wind that made Lu Ye's face ache. But before he could catch his breath, he saw from the corner of his eye that the stream of light had changed direction and was now attacking him. This thing was clearly under Wei Kai's control. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan were desperately attacking him, but he didn't care, only focused on killing Lu Yi. This was exactly what he had roared before. Even if he died, he would bury Lu Yi with him. Lu Yi didn't know what kind of treasure this was, but its lethality was so strong that even if he used all his strength, he could only stop it for a moment. Unless he killed Wei Kai, there would be no end to it. And when it attacked again, Lu Yi had just gotten up from the ground and could not dodge in time. Just as he was about to attack again, he felt a weight on his shoulder and a large hand grab him. Then, Lu Yi felt himself being thrown away. In midair, he saw Giant Armor's burly figure standing in his original position. With a flash of light, a tortoise-shell-like barrier suddenly appeared in front of Giant Armor. The stream of light attacked. Asterisk boom. Asterisk with a loud bang, Giant Armor's body shook violently. Dense cracks suddenly appeared on that seemingly impregnable tortoise-shell-like barrier, and in the next moment, it shattered with a loud bang. The stream of light pierced through Giant Armor's body, bringing with it a spray of blood. With a muffled groan, Giant Armor fell to one knee. Lu Ye's eyes became cold and harsh, and the flames on the mountain plate saber in his hand burned even more fiercely. On the other side, Li Baxian's body had merged with the sword light, transforming into a shocking sword aura that attacked Wei Quebec. The sword in his hand flickered like a snake's tongue, leaving bloody wounds on Wei Kei's body. He originally wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Wei Kei, but Wei Kei used a spell to push him far away. At this moment, Lu Yi swooped down from the sky, followed closely by the stream of light that had wounded Giant Armor. Even though he felt the murderous intent behind him, Lu Ye's eyes did not waver in the slightest. Wei Kei was clearly an arrow at the end of its flight. If this saber slashed down, he would undoubtedly die. Now, it was time to see if his saber was faster or if his opponent's treasure was faster. To be continued. Chapter 569. Wei Kei's figure staggered as he was covered in wounds, a tragic sight to behold. First, he had been attacked by Lu Yi and the others in the illusion array. Although he had managed to break through the array by chance, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Then, he was besieged by everyone and had even resorted to using the broken arrow artifact. It could be said that at this moment he was truly a lamp without oil. His vision was blurred, and when he looked up, all he could see was Lu Ye's figure swooping down from the sky. He couldn't even see Lu Ye's face. A bright blade light flashed as the mountain-ascending saber easily broke through Wei Kei's thin body protecting spirit chi and slashed down at his neck. Passing by each other, Lu Ye's feet plowed several dozen meters into the ground before he slowly stabilized himself. The illusory grand array played a huge role in their battle success. Being in the middle of the illusory grand array, Wei Kei was unable to withstand their attacks. One had to know that back in the hunting ground, Lu Ye's group of 3 had fought He Bing with great difficulty, and in the end, Lu Yi had even used his beast transformation secret technique to kill him. Although there was only a 2-order difference between the 7th order and 9th order, the difference in strength was like the difference between heaven and earth. Even if Lu Yi and the others had made significant progress in their cultivation compared to when they were in the hunting ground, even with the addition of Giant Armor, if not for the illusion array, the 4 of them together would not have been Wei Kei's opponent. At most, they would have been defeated one by one. The sense of crisis also disappeared as soon as he slashed down with his saber. After all, the broken arrow was controlled by Wei Kei, so once he died, the artifact also lost its power, its light converging as it reverted to its original form and fell from the sky. Lu Yi breathed a long sigh of relief and turned around to see Wei Kei's headless body lying on the ground, blood gushing from his neck. A Cloud River 9th Order cultivator had been killed by him, Li Baxian, and the others. Almost at the moment of Wei Kei's death, Xia Liang suddenly roared angrily. His long saber bloomed with a shocking saber light, and he fiercely slashed forward. With this saber strike, the entrapment array, which was already on the verge of collapse, finally couldn't hold on any longer and shattered. When the 2 of them saw that Wei Kei was in a precarious situation, they knew that it would be difficult to kill Lu Yi this time, so they had been thinking of ways to escape. Trapped in the entrapment array, the only way to escape was to break the array. Seeing Wei Kei's vitality disappear, Tan Sheng and Xia Liang, who were entangled with the wolf pack, were shocked. Neither of them had expected that Wei Kei, a Cloud River 9th Order cultivator, would actually die at the hands of Lu Yi's group. At this moment, the 2 of them were in an extremely miserable state. Their bodies were covered with wounds, and their clothes were dyed red with blood. Although the 2 of them were extremely powerful, they were still powerless when facing the siege of an entire pack of wolves. If it weren't for the wolf pack's misgivings and the fact that they didn't dare to push them too far, the two of them would have already lost their lives. Even so, the two of them were still heavily injured, and their auras were in disorder. It was a cooperative relationship, but Wei Kei had been careless and had been killed by a few 4th or 5th order Cloud River Realm cultivators because of his own stupidity. Moreover, they were also in a bad situation. If they didn't escape now, they would be left behind as well. The two figures rushed out one after another, and wolf howls rang out. Pale blue wind blades flew towards the two of them, hitting Xia Liang and Tan Xing left and right, adding new injuries to their bodies. Under their guidance, the aftermath of the battle with the wolf pack spread out in all directions again and again. After all, it was an unmanned spirit array. Although it was strong, it wasn't too heaven-defying. Bit by bit, the spirit array was worn down until Xia Liang used his shocking saber strike and finally broke. "Let's go!" Xia Liang let out a low shout and charged out. Tan Xing followed closely behind. Even though Wei Kei had died right under their noses, neither of them had any intention of avenging him at this moment. Normally, he wouldn't chase after two 9th order cultivators no matter what. It was no different from courting death. But at this moment, Tan Xing and Xia Liang were both seriously injured. It was hard to say how much of their strength they could use. This was the best time to kill them, otherwise, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to kill them after they recovered. Seeing this, Li Ba Xian hurriedly followed on his sword while shouting, "Yu Chan, stay behind and take care of junior brother Giant Armor." Unfortunately, the monster wolves couldn't fly, so if these two wanted to escape, they couldn't stop them. After killing Wei Kei, Lu Yi had just calmed his tumbling spirit qi and hadn't had time to deal with Tan Xing and Xia Liang when he saw the two break out of the spirit array. He immediately chased after them. A group of monster wolves, under the command of the alpha wolf, ran out with Lu Yi, obviously wanting to help, but after only half an hour, this group of monster wolves returned. This was the downside of not being able to fly. No matter how fast they ran in the mountains, they couldn't outrun flying on their own. After chasing for a while, Lu Yi and the others disappeared, so the monster wolves could only return. At this time, Feng Yuchan had also finished bandaging Giant Armor's wounds. Giant Armor's injuries looked terrible, but in fact, they weren't serious and would only take a day or two to recover. Giant Armor was previously injured by the broken arrow. Although body cultivators had thick skin and strong recovery abilities, it was still an injury that pierced through his body. Since then he had been half kneeling on the ground, so his injuries were unknown. He and Lu Yi were enough to chase after them. If they could kill them, the two of them could work together, but if they couldn't, then Feng Yuchan wouldn't be of any help. Hearing this, Feng Yuchan stopped and watched as Lu Yi and Li Ba Xian turned into streaks of light and chased them out of the spiritual land, deep into Mount Taimang. Back then in the hunting ground, Lu Yi had been chased to the point that he had nowhere to go. Less than 2 months later, the situation had been completely reversed. It was as the saying goes, the river flows east for 30 years and the river flows west for 30 years. Every dog has his day. While running, Tan Xing roared, "Lu Yi, stop. If this continues, no one will have a good ending." This was already an extremely deep place in the Taimang Mountains, and there were many powerful demonic beasts entrenched there. Normally, even if there were cultivators who came in, they would all be sneaky, not daring to make too much of a commotion, so as to not alarm any demonic beasts. She didn't know how Li Ba Xian and Lu Yi were doing. She tried to send a message, but there was no reply, so she could only wait silently. At this time, Lu Yi and Li Ba Xian had already chased them for several hundred kilometers. Tan Xing and Xia Liang, who were running in front, had no intention of stopping. They just desperately ran forward, blood constantly spilling from their bodies. This made Lu Yi even more certain that these two were in bad condition. Otherwise, two 9th order cultivators wouldn't be in such a sorry state. If he missed such a rare opportunity, he would never be able to kill these two in the Cloud River battlefield again. These two were both Cloud River 9th order cultivators who could break through to the true lake realm at any time. Once they did, they would have to leave the Cloud River battlefield. Lu Yi was chased to a dead end by them in the hunting ground, so he remembered this grudge in his heart. Moreover, they had found the spirit land. If he didn't kill them this time, the location of the spirit land would definitely be exposed, and there might be some trouble in the future. Wei Kei was already dead, so as long as he could kill these two, the existence of the spirit land wouldn't be exposed. If they really alerted some powerful monster beasts, Tan Sheng and Xiao Yang wouldn't have a good ending, but the same was true for Lu Yi and Li Baxian. Therefore, the best way to deal with this was for Lu Yi to stop and let them escape. But facing Tan Sheng's shout, Lu Yi remained unmoved. Lu Yi didn't speak, but Li Baxian coldly snorted, "If you have the ability, then let's fight. Let's see if you die or us brothers." Tan Sheng, who was running in front, almost ground his teeth to pieces. He and Xia Liang were both Cloud River 9th Order cultivators. In the past, they didn't dare to say that they could summon the wind and summon the rain, but at the very least, they were a group of top masters. When had they ever been chased by 2 4th or 5th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators in such a sorry state? No one would believe him if he told them. Lu Ye's killing intent was firm, so how could he be swayed by a few words? And the more Tan Sheng said this, the more it meant that his situation was bad. Otherwise, he would have just stopped and fought. "Lu Yi, do you really want to die together with us?" Tan Sheng roared again. Not only that, as time passed, the situation of the two became worse and worse, and the speed of their flying artifacts slowed down. If this continued, it was only a matter of time before Lu Yi and Li Baxian caught up. "Brother Xia." Tan Sheng turned his head to look at Xiao Liang, only to see that this powerful blade master from the Wild Blade sect was as pale as paper and his aura was chaotic, but his eyes were still as sharp as a blade. But today, such a bizarre thing was happening to them, so how could they not be angry and sullen? If it weren't for their serious injuries, how could Lu Yi and Li Baxian dare to be so presumptuous in front of them? The injuries they suffered during the battle with the wolf pack were too serious, so the two of them couldn't even use 30% of their usual strength. They couldn't even shake off the enemy's pursuit. While they still had the strength to fight, they might have a chance to kill these two. After all, they were only 4th or 5th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators. Although Tan Sheng knew that this wasn't the best way to deal with it, there was no better way, so he nodded lightly, "Then let's fight." Saying so, the two of them flew straight down and landed on the ground a moment later. Previously, when they were entangled with the wolf pack, Xia Liang's injuries were much more serious than his, and because Xia Liang's strength was greater than his, the wolf pack was more focused on Xia Liang, causing most of the pressure to fall on Xia Liang. Facing Tan Sheng's inquiry, Xia Liang coldly spat out a single word: "Fight." They couldn't escape, and if they continued like this, their condition would only get worse and worse. When the time came, they wouldn't even be qualified to fight. Li Baxian grabbed the wine gourd at his waist, took a sip and said softly, "Little junior brother, which one do you choose?" Lu Ye's eyes were fixed on Xia Liang as he slowly walked forward. Li Baxian nodded, "Then I want the remaining one." Saying so, he opened his mouth and spat out a dozen flying swords towards Tan Sheng. With their current state, it was no longer suitable for the two of them to fight in the air as that would consume more strength, so fighting on the ground was the best choice. Just after the two of them landed, Lu Yi and Li Baxian also arrived, standing less than 1,000 meters away from them. For pairs of eyes collided in the air, sparks flying everywhere, and the atmosphere in the mountains suddenly became tense. Chapter 570. The flying swords shuttled through the void and shot towards Tan Sheng one after another, but Tan Sheng simply flicked his spear and blocked the oncoming flying swords, causing a series of clanging sounds to ring out. Worthy of being a Cloud River 9th Order cultivator, even in the face of such a fierce and concentrated onslaught, he was still able to defend himself and even had the strength to counterattack, resisting the onslaught of flying swords as he continued to press towards Li Baxian. Li Baxian was a sword cultivator, and the purest kind at that. Facing such an enemy, Tan Sheng knew that he could not pull away, otherwise, under the continuous barrage of flying swords, there would be no room to breathe. Dealing with a sword cultivator was actually somewhat similar to dealing with a Dharma cultivator, The key was to close the distance and not give the sword cultivator any room to maneuver his sword. But even if he closed the distance, it was still more dangerous than dealing with a Dharma cultivator, because sword cultivators were also armament cultivators, and close combat was a common occurrence for them. Li Baxian grabbed the wine gourd in his hand and took a big gulp. At the same time, he burped in satisfaction. Sword cries rang out from behind him as more flying swords spread out. With a thought, the flying swords shot out like chasing stars and moon, making it difficult for Tan Sheng to advance even an inch. While the battle was in full swing, on the other side, Lu Yi and Xiao Yang's figures had already rushed forward. Both of them were saber cultivators, and one of them was from the Wild Saber sect, the most orthodox saber master. Compared to a sword cultivator, a saber master did not lack killing intent, but more of an indomitable spirit. So even if Xiao Yang was seriously injured at the moment, even if his face was pale, facing an opponent several minor realms lower in cultivation, he did not have the slightest intention of retreating. No matter who it was, neither of them had any intention of using their imperial flying swords to test the waters. The distance between them quickly closed, and they collided. With a loud bang, spirit chi exploded as the two long swords collided and stared at each other at close range. The ground beneath their feet instantly cracked like a spider web upon the collision. Violent waves of air swept out in all directions, causing the surrounding trees to sway. After a brief moment of deadlock, both of them suddenly exerted their strength and the two long swords crossed, Lu Yi slashing towards Xiao Yang's neck while Xiao Yang stabbed towards Lu Ye's chest. The moment they clashed, they were fighting with their lives on the line. This was a clash between bladesmen. There was nothing fancy about it, only ruthlessness and mercilessness. The defensive spirit tattoo on Lu Ye's chest shattered and blood splattered everywhere. A thin, blood-red line appeared on Xiao Yang's neck and blood seeped out. In that instant, no matter who it was, both of them had walked through the gates of hell. His silhouette shifted, and the long sabers continued to clash. The clanging sounds were endless, and every clash was an intense collision of spiritual energy. His saber cultivator. This fight with Xiao Yang made him truly understand what it meant to be constantly walking on the edge of life and death. Both of them waved their swords with the mentality of killing the other and protecting themselves at the same time. But after just a moment, they realized that it was impossible. If they risked their lives to kill the other, they would definitely be killed by the other. The most likely scenario was that they would die together. Neither of them could accept this. The speed at which the swords flashed became faster and faster, and the sounds of the swords colliding became more frequent. Lu Yi keenly sensed that Xiao Yang's qi and blood were converging towards his right arm. He was clearly using the blood transfer technique. In terms of cultivation, he was inferior to Xiao Yang. There was a gap of 5 small levels between them, which was impossible to make up for. But at this moment he could fight Xiao Yang to a standstill. All of this was because Xiao Yang was seriously injured and could not unleash his full strength. This was undoubtedly very advantageous to him. As time passed, Xiao Yang's condition would worsen. On the other hand, because he had been merging his qi and blood with Hupe, he could unleash more and more strength. If he could really stimulate the beast transformation, Xiao Yang would die without a doubt. But this required time and the accumulation of momentum. Ever since he obtained the secret beast transformation technique, he had only stimulated it in his battle with He Bing. But even so, Lu Yi did not hesitate to attack. Xiao Yang obviously knew that the longer the battle dragged on, the worse it would be for him. So, he used almost all his strength in every slash. Even though he was bleeding profusely, the power of his attacks grew stronger and stronger. The swords collided again, and the recoil caused both of them to pause. But at this moment, Lu Yi suddenly felt a sense of danger. Looking up, he saw Xiao Yang holding his sword horizontally in front of him, one hand holding the hilt and the other pushing the blade horizontally. Violent spiritual energy suddenly burst out, and a stunning sword light suddenly slashed out. The speed of this slash was so fast that Lu Yi had no time to react. Fortunately, he had already retreated when he sensed something was wrong. But even so, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He was hit. Lu Ye's heart sank. He did not know what Xiao Yang's slash was, but it was definitely a secret technique because it was stronger than all the previous slashes. The moment he was hit, Lu Ye's figure did not retreat. Instead, he advanced and, under Xiao Yang's stunned gaze, slashed down. The flash. Blood splattered. Consecutive slashes. However, when the second slash fell, it was blocked by Xiao Yang. The violent power sent him flying, and Lu Ye's figure staggered. With Feng Xing's support on his legs, Lu Ye did not show any mercy. Wrapped in a terrifying pressure, he madly attacked Xiao Yang. His sword flashed, and for a moment, Xiao Yang found it difficult to resist, adding a few more wounds to his body. Although Yang Kai's secret technique had injured Lu Ye, using this secret technique in his severely wounded state had placed a great burden on his body. Under normal circumstances, after being injured by him, Lu Ye would definitely retreat. This way, he would have time to catch his breath and prepare for the next wave of attacks. But the result was beyond his expectations. After Lu Ye was injured, not only did he not retreat, he instead took advantage of the situation to counterattack, causing Xiao Yang's situation to become even worse. What made Xiao Yang even more uncomfortable was that his opponents seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. At the beginning of their confrontation, they were evenly matched, but now, the speed and strength of his opponent's slashes were much faster and fiercer than before. With the balance broken, all Xiao Yang could do was resist Lu Ye's attacks. Even though he was forced to retreat, Xiao Yang did not give up resisting. He took a moment to glance over at the other side of the battlefield, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Because Tan Sheng's situation was even worse than his. After all, this was Li Baxian, a legendary master who had been in the spirit stream realm for more than a decade. Although he was only a fifth-order cultivator now, the strength he could display was far beyond that. Tan Sheng's injuries were not lighter than his, but his strength was not as good. Fighting Li Baxian in such a situation, how could he have a good end? He couldn't even get close to Li Baxian. Even if he tried his best, he could only block the incoming flying swords. From time to time, new wounds would appear on his body. How could things have developed to this point? These three ninth-order masters had come to Grand Mang Mountain in high spirits to find Lu Ye for revenge, but when they found him, one of them had died while the other two were being chased down. It seemed they wouldn't live much longer. Before setting off, they had thought of countless possibilities, including Lu Ye using the transmission array to escape, using the Heaven's Fate Pillar to escape, or using some other method to escape, but in the end, not only had they escaped, they had even been caught. It's over! Xiao Yang knew that he would not be able to escape this time. Without any will to live, a look of determination appeared on his face. Lu Ye, who was attacking fiercely, immediately noticed this change and immediately held back his strength to guard against the unexpected. Sure enough, the next moment, Xiao Yang completely gave up on defending, his spirit qi surging violently as he took on a stance of fighting Lu Ye with his life on the line. All kinds of exquisite blade techniques were displayed one after another, showing signs of reversing the situation for a while. However, at this moment, Lu Ye's and Hu Po's blood qi had merged to a very deep degree, so every time he struck out, he could borrow strength from Hu Po. It wouldn't be long before he could even activate his beast transformation secret technique, so no matter what Xiao Yang did, he was still like a trapped beast. However, at that moment, Lu Ye suddenly noticed some strange movements, causing him to frown. In the next moment, the sound of something tearing through the air came from a short distance away, followed by a stream of light. When the stream of light dissipated, many figures appeared and surrounded the battlefield where they were. How could there be so many people in the depths of Grand Mang Mountain? Lu Ye was puzzled. The most important thing was that he didn't know the origins of these people. There were quite a few of them, at least a dozen or so, and judging from the spirit qi fluctuations coming from their bodies, several of them were at the 9th order while the rest were mostly at the 6th order. Such a group of uninvited guests was not low in cultivation. The fierce battle instantly subsided. Not only did Lu Ye and Xiao Yang stop fighting, but even Li Baxian and Tan Sheng also stopped and separated, gathering together in pairs and remaining vigilant. In the middle of a life-or-death battle, a group of people had suddenly appeared. Before the situation was clear, who would dare act rashly? Even if Lu Yi and Li Baxin were unwilling, there was nothing they could do. On the other hand, Tan Sheng and Xia Liang both breathed a sigh of relief. No matter which camp these people came from, at least the two of them weren't in any danger for the time being. Being able to live a little longer was still a little longer. What if these people were from Myriad Demon Ridge? Next to Li Baxin, Lu Yi held his mountain-coiling saber, his spirit chi surging as he turned to look at him. Li Baxin slowly shook his head, indicating that he didn't know these people. He had a wide network of connections and had spent more than 10 years in the Spirit Stream battlefield, seeing off group after group of Spirit Stream stage cultivators. However, he had spent most of his time in the Spirit Stream battlefield in the Pill Heart Sect's headquarters and rarely left. Most of the people he interacted with were experts on the Spirit Stream rankings. He didn't know many people who weren't on the Spirit Stream rankings, and therefore he had never met any of them. Chapter 571. In the messy battlefield, uninvited guests suddenly appeared and surrounded the place, forcing the four who were fighting to stop. Li Baxin was sizing up this group of people, trying to guess their origins. Weren't Xia Liang and Tan Sheng doing the same? They were already in a dire situation, and if nothing unexpected happened, the two of them would definitely die today, so they were happy to see this group of cultivators. If they were from Grand Heaven Alliance, then there was nothing to say, they would die either way. But if they were from Myriad Demon Ridge, then they would have a chance at life. While observing, Xia Liang's eyes suddenly lit up as he called out to one of the Ninth Order cultivators, "Is it Zhou Yuntian of Burning Sky Valley, Brother Zhou?" Lu Yi and Li Baxin's faces turned solemn when they heard this. Things were getting troublesome. Burning Sky Valley was a force from Myriad Demon Ridge, and since Xia Liang could recognize Zhou Yuntian's name, he obviously knew him. In other words, this group of people was most likely from Myriad Demon Ridge. After being called out, Zhou Yuntian glanced at Xia Liang with a thoughtful look in his eyes. "Is Brother Xia Liang of Wild Saber Sect, Brother Xia?" Xia Liang nodded. "It is this Xia." From the conversation between the two, it was obvious that they knew each other, but even so, it was a disaster for Lu Yi and Li Baxin. The two of them dared to chase down a Ninth Order cultivator because Xia Liang and Tan Sheng were seriously injured, but how could they be a match for so many Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators? Even escaping was an extravagant hope. The other side had surrounded this place as soon as they arrived, and with so many people, the two had no room to escape. Any rash move would likely result in them being besieged. Lu Ye's thoughts turned sharply as he tried to think of a way to break out of this situation, but no matter how he thought about it, the current situation was simply a dead end. Xia Liang and Zhou Yuntian exchanged a few words before Zhou Yuntian asked, "Why is Brother Xia in such a sorry state?" Xia Liang sighed, "A tiger has fallen from grace, let's not talk about it. Brother Zhou, this one has a request." Zhou Yuntian gestured with his hand, "Please speak, Brother Xia." Xia Liang looked coldly at Lu Yi and Li Baxin and said in a deep voice, "Brother Zhou, please kill these two. This one will be eternally grateful." His current physical condition was no longer suitable for fighting. His body was covered with new injuries and old injuries. Without a period of time to recuperate, it would be impossible for him to recover his strength. Although he did not want to rely on others, he had no better choice now that things had come to this. The main reason he came here was to avenge Yan Xing. As long as Li Baxin died, his wish would be fulfilled. As for whether Li Baxin died in his hands, he couldn't force it. "Oh." Zhou Yuntian chuckled and asked curiously, "I wonder what kind of enmity Brother Xia has with these two friends? They're actually fighting to the death here?" These people had also sensed that there was an intense battle going on here, which was why they were attracted over here. Otherwise, how could they coincidentally come to this place in the depths of the enormous Great Mang Mountains? Xia Liang pointed at Li Baxin and coldly snorted, "Brother Zhou, look carefully, who is this person?" Only then did Zhou Yuntian look at Lu Yi and Li Baxin. His gaze swept over Lu Yi and did not pay much attention to him, but when he looked at Li Baxin, his expression changed and he asked in surprise, "You are Li Baxin?" Li Baxian did not know him, but he knew Li Baxian. Who didn't know the legend of the Spirit Stream battlefield? It could be said that if Li Baxian did not wear a mask, at least 5 out of 10 people would be able to recognize him, including Feng Yuechan. Therefore, when he saw Li Baxian, Zhou Yuntian was very surprised because he did not expect to see such a legend in the Cloud River battlefield. As soon as he spoke, the others also looked at Li Baxian. Someone nodded. It really is Li Baxian. I saw him once in the Spirit Stream battlefield from afar. It's him. Didn't he and Feng Yuechan seal their cultivation and stay in the Spirit Stream battlefield? Why did they suddenly come to the Cloud River battlefield? Looking at his cultivation, he's already a 5th order Cloud River realm cultivator. It seems that he has been in the Cloud River battlefield for some time. We haven't been in contact with the outside world for a long time and missed a lot of interesting things. This group of people did not avoid anyone and began whispering to each other, causing Lu Yi and Li Baxian to look at each other strangely. The two of them were ready to fight to the death. Admittedly, the two of them were no match for these people, but it was impossible for them to just sit and wait for death. Even if they could not escape, they had to drag a few people down with them before they died. Those 8th and 9th order masters were not easy to kill, so Tan Sheng and Xiao Liang would definitely die. But now, it seemed that this group of people did not have any malicious intent towards them. Lu Yi did not understand, and Li Baxian was also confused. He glanced at Zhou Yuntian and nodded. Yes, I am Li Baxian. What advice does fellow Taoist have for me? Zhou Yuntian showed a trace of fear on his face. Fellow Taoist Li is too serious. I dare not give advice. When this Zhou was cultivating in the Spirit Stream battlefield, fellow Taoist Li was already famous. Although my cultivation is higher than fellow Taoist Li's, it is only because I entered the Cloud River battlefield earlier. If I entered the Cloud River battlefield at the same time, fellow Taoist Li would have already broken through to the true lake realm. Fellow Taoist, please don't embarrass me. Zhou Yuntian's humble appearance made Li Baxian very uncomfortable. He wailed in his heart, what the hell? A myriad demon ridge cultivator not only did not show any hostility after recognizing me, he even acted so respectfully. When did I become so famous? He did not understand the situation, and neither did Tan Sheng and Xiao Liang. Xiao Liang frowned and said, Brother Zhou, Li Baxian is from Pill Heart sect. Zhou Yuntian nodded, of course I know. You know? If you know, why don't you hurry up and make a move? Seeing that Xiao Liang was about to say something, Zhou Yuntian chuckled and raised his hand to stop him. Brother Xia, I understand your intentions, but we are not divided into factions here. Since we are all here, we are all family. There is no need to mention Grand Heaven Alliance or Myriad Demon Ridge. I don't know what grudges the 4 of you have to fight here, but since we have bumped into each other, it must be fate. Let's forget about all the grudges in the past. These words left Lu Yi and the other 3 dumbfounded. Since ancient times, the Myriad Devil Ridge's Grand Heaven Alliance had always been at odds with each other. The cultivators of the 2 factions had constantly fought each other, and the blood feud between them could never be washed away. In the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield, regardless of whether they knew each other or not, as long as they were from different factions, they would have a reason to kill each other. Not to mention that Zhou Yuntian was only a 9th order Cloud River realm cultivator. Even if he was at the peak of the Spirit Sea realm, he was not qualified to resolve the grudges between the 2 factions. What's more, not only were the 4 of them opposing each other, they also had private grudges. Otherwise, Lu Yi would not have chased them all the way here, as if he wanted to kill them all. However, Zhou Yuntian's words came from the bottom of his heart. Furthermore, none of the surrounding cultivators showed any signs of rejection. Instead, they all nodded in agreement. Some even opened their mouths to advise the 4 of them to maintain harmony. The scene was indescribably strange. Xiao Liang and Tan Sheng both looked at Zhou Yuntian as if they were looking at a madman. If it weren't for the fact that they were in poor condition, they would have cursed out loud. Although Li Baxian felt strange in his heart, he still nodded. Yes, yes, we should make peace. Fighting and killing all the time, what a scandal. Although he was annoyed at these uninvited guests for ruining his and Lu Ye's plan to eliminate the root of the problem, the current situation was still better than being besieged by this group of people. When Xia Liang called out Zhou Yuntian's name, Li Baxian had almost thought of his last words. Fellow Taoist Li is still the sensible one. Zhou Yuntian looked at Li Baxian with a smile, a look of praise on his face. Li Baxian responded with a smile, looking cultured and refined. At that moment, the sound of something breaking through the air accompanied by a surge of spiritual energy came from the depths of the jungle. Zhou Yuntian looked up and his expression suddenly turned solemn as he shouted, "Senior has arrived." As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the 10+ cultivators turned solemn, and they bowed respectfully before assuming a posture of greeting. Their exaggerated reaction, coupled with Zhou Yuntian's mention of "senior," made Lu Yi and Li Baxian's expressions turn solemn. They faintly felt that the senior Zhou Yuntian mentioned was an extraordinary character, otherwise, a group of Cloud River Realm cultivators wouldn't be so respectful. Looking in the direction of the sound of something breaking through the air, whether it was Lu Yi, Li Baxian, Tan Xing, or Xia Liang, all of them were shocked. They saw 4 figures flying through the air, and judging from the spiritual energy fluctuations coming from these 4, they were all Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators. If it were just 4 9th Order cultivators, it wouldn't be enough to surprise Lu Yi and the others. What surprised Lu Yi and the others was the posture of these 4 9th Order cultivators. The 4 of them were in front, left, and right, carrying a fragrant imperial concubine as they floated over. There was a pink translucent curtain hanging on the bed. Through the curtain, one could vaguely see a graceful figure lying lazily on the bed. Before she arrived, her enchanting fragrance had already drifted with the wind, causing the battlefield that was originally filled with the smell of blood to be filled with a blurred aura. Lu Yi was at a loss. He really couldn't understand who the person on the fragrant imperial concubine was that she could make 4 Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators lower themselves to her. On the Cloud River battlefield, those who could cultivate to the 9th Order were all proud and arrogant people. Even if they were faced with someone stronger than them, they would at most call them Dao brother. However, from the figure vaguely visible through the curtain, it was obvious that the person on the fragrant imperial concubine was a woman. In the blink of an eye, the fragrant imperial concubine arrived above everyone's heads, and the 4 9th Order cultivators stood in the air with solemn expressions. As the mountain breeze blew, the fragrance lingering at the tip of their nose became even richer. This fragrance was something that Lu Yi had never smelled before. It was indescribable, but it had a wonderful power that could intoxicate anyone who smelled it. Anyone who smelled it couldn't help but want more. "Welcome, senior." Led by Zhou Yuntian, more than a dozen cultivators who had arrived first spoke in unison, their expressions extremely sincere. Lu Yi even noticed that a few of them were desperately inhaling, as if they wanted to absorb more of the fragrance. His face couldn't help but become dignified as he quietly glanced at Li Baxian, only to see that the other party's face was also filled with vigilance. The 2 senior brothers had obviously noticed the strangeness of the situation. To be continued. Chapter 572. Ever since he met Zhou Yuntian and the others, there was a strange aura everywhere. Zhou Yuntian was from Burning Heaven Valley and was from the Myriad Demon Ridge camp, so the other cultivators with him must also be from Myriad Demon Ridge. But even if these people recognized Li Baxian, they did not show the slightest hostility towards him. Even after Xia Liang asked for help, they said that there were no camps here, boasting shamelessly that they could resolve the grievances between the 2 sides. At this moment, there was even an inexplicable venerable one that appeared out of nowhere, causing Zhou Yuntian and the others to be extremely respectful. As for the people carrying the imperial concubine bed, they were astonishingly 4 Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators. This senior, just who is he? What they saw in front of them was undoubtedly difficult for Lu Yi and Li Baxian to understand, while Xia Liang and Tan Xing were also full of doubts. Amidst the silence, a voice suddenly sounded, "Is there another newcomer?" The voice came from the imperial concubine's bed, languid and sweet, making those who heard it feel as if an invisible hand was tugging at their heartstrings. As this voice sounded, Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat, and an inexplicable desire welled up in his heart. Along with this voice, it was not just the heartbeat, but also the relaxation of one's mind. Although it was impossible to see what the woman on the bed looked like, just listening to her voice gave off an extremely warm feeling, making one want to be completely immersed in it. Lu Ye's heart was on high alert, and Li Baxian beside him also noticed that something was wrong, his sword-like brow furrowed as his eyes filled with vigilance. Looking at Tan Sheng and Xiao Yang over there, Li Baxian's expression became even more dignified. Because at this moment, both of them had blurred eyes as they stared at the figure on the imperial concubine's bed, their eyes filled with a fiery look. Tan Sheng and Xiao Yang were much stronger than Lu Yi and Xiao Yang, and both of them had extraordinary backgrounds, so logically speaking, it was impossible for them to be so weak. However, both of them were seriously injured and had consumed a lot of spirit qi and concentration, so their performance at this moment was much worse than Lu Yi and Xiao Yang. Zhou Yuntian respectfully replied, reporting to Senior, "These 4 fellow Taoists seem to have some grievances and were fighting here. We have already stopped them." On the fragrant imperial concubine couch, the lazy voice sounded again, "These 2 Ninth Order realms aren't bad." Then, Lu Yi felt someone's gaze pass through the curtain and land on him. "These 2 are a little lacking." Zhou Yuntian immediately said, "Senior, one of these 2 is fellow Taoist Li Baxian, a legend of the spirit stream battlefield. Although his cultivation isn't high, his potential is limitless. If he can break through to the 9th Order Cloud River realm in the future, he will be able to help Senior achieve his long-cherished wish. As for the one beside him, subordinate doesn't recognize him, but since he can accompany Li Baxian, he can't be mediocre. If that's the case..." His honor lightly muttered, seemingly thinking about something. Very quickly, he made a decision, "Then, let's bring them all back." The conversation between Zhou Yuntian and his honor was transmitted into Lu Ye's ears, causing Lu Ye's mood to become indescribably heavy. Previously, Lu Yi only felt that the situation was somewhat strange, and there were many things that were hard to understand, but right now, there were even more things that were hard to understand. Because Zhou Yuntian, a mere 9th Order cultivator, actually claimed to be a subordinate in front of that venerable. This venerable? Who exactly was she? From the looks of the situation, it wasn't just Zhou Yuntian, but all the cultivators here were subordinates of that venerable. What kind of magical means did she have to make so many proud and arrogant cultivators follow her orders? Suddenly, a large amount of pink mist spread out from the imperial concubine's bed and swept towards Lu Yi and the others. Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed down on the mountain coiling saber, his spirit energy surging, while Li Baxian's flying swords were also hovering around him. However, before the 2 of them could do anything, auras from all directions firmly locked onto them, causing their movements to instantly freeze. Zhou Yuntian said, "Fellow Taoist Li, please don't be impatient. His honor has no ill intentions towards you, he just wants to invite you back as guests." Although his words were pleasant to hear, if Li Baxian and Lu Yi really dared to resist, they would definitely be suppressed by these people. In such a situation, how could the 2 of them be opponents? Even escaping would be an extravagant hope. Lu Yi and Li Baxian looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. This time, they really were meat on someone's chopping block. The pink mist swept over and enveloped a large area. The mist was filled with the intoxicating fragrance that they smelled before. Lu Yi immediately noticed the abnormality in his talent tree. He immersed his divine sense into it and saw a gray mist ignite on his talent tree. This pink mist was poisonous, but the toxicity wasn't too strong, so the talent tree didn't react much. Just as he was about to urge his spirit energy to protect himself, Zhou Yuntian's voice sounded again, "Fellow Taoists, please don't resist." His voice wasn't as gentle as before and was now a bit colder. Clearly, if Lu Yi and the others resisted, these people would take action to suppress them. Lu Yi quietly stood in place, guessing what the pink mist was for. The toxicity wasn't strong, so these people clearly didn't have any intention of killing them. Since they didn't want to kill them and said they wanted to invite them back as guests, then the use of this mist, Lu Yi turned his head to look, only to see Xia Liang and Tan Sheng suddenly slumped to the ground, unconscious. Li Baxin, who was beside him, also staggered and then fell to the ground. Immediately after Li Baxin, Lu Yi directly fell to the ground. Even Hu Pe, who was squatting on his shoulder, also fell into a deep sleep. Bring all of them back. His Honor's soft voice sounded once again. Yes. Zhou Yuntian replied. Immediately after, Lu Yi felt someone grab him by the clothes around his waist and lift him up. Like the wind and lightning, he quietly opened his eyes and looked around. He saw that Hu Po was also being held in the other hand of the person who was lifting him. They went all the way to the depths of Taimang Mountain, and only after about half an hour did they show signs of descending. Lu Yi pretended to be unconscious and didn't dare to open his eyes. He didn't know where exactly he was, but he heard many people greeting him, and there were also many powerful life fluctuations around him. There seemed to be a lot of cultivators gathered here. The sound of a door being pushed open sounded, and a moment later, Lu Yi felt himself being brought into a room and placed on a bed. Immediately after, Zhou Yuntian's voice sounded, "You all go rest, I'll stay here and keep watch." Someone replied, "Then, we'll have to trouble Brother Zhou. It's a small matter." The others retreated one after another, leaving only Zhou Yuntian here to keep watch. Lu Yi lay down motionlessly and calmly sensed his surroundings. He could hear several even breathing sounds around him. Presumably, it was Li Baxin and others who were unconscious. After waiting for a moment, the door was pushed open again, and that Zhou Yuntian respectfully said, "Your Honor." A fragrant wind blew over. It was the same intoxicating fragrance that Lu Yi smelled before. Then, Lu Yi felt that his Honor was standing not far away from him. He didn't know what his Honor was busy with, but Lu Yi clearly felt a strange energy fluctuation. A moment later, a soft muffled groan sounded. That sound seemed to be coming from Xia Liang. His Honor moved his feet, and that strange energy fluctuation fluctuated again. A moment later, another muffled groan sounded, and this time, it was Tan Sheng's voice. He wasn't killing people because Lu Yi could sense that Tan Sheng and Xia Liang were still alive. This made him very curious what kind of method his Honor was using. Very soon, it was Li Baxin's turn, and just like the previous two, he also let out a muffled groan. The fragrance lingering around the tip of Lu Ye's nose became a lot richer, and Lu Yi felt that his Honor had already walked to his side. In the next moment, two warm and soft fingers were placed on his forehead. That strange energy fluctuation fluctuated again, and Lu Yi instantly felt that his mind was slightly impacted. Immediately after, something inexplicable seemed to have appeared in his mind. Involuntarily, he also let out a muffled groan. After that, his Honor's voice was filled with traces of weakness as he instructed Zhou Yuntian, "When they wake up, have them wash up and bring them to see me. They stink so bad." Zhou Yuntian's voice was filled with a trace of weakness. "Yes." Zhou Yuntian replied respectfully. The sound of footsteps quickly faded away. It was clear that his Honor had left. At this time, Lu Yi was immersed in inspecting his talent tree. While inspecting, a large amount of gray mist ignited on the talent tree, but very soon, that gray mist completely disappeared, and the talent tree also returned to normal. Just what kind of inexplicable method did his Honor use on me? Lu Yi recalled what happened just now. When his Honor used that method, his mind was obviously impacted greatly, and something inexplicable seemed to have appeared in his mind. It shouldn't be poison, but for the talent tree to have a reaction, it means that it is something that has invaded my body and is harmful to me. Thus, no matter what it is, it has already been burned clean by the talent tree, and I won't be affected at all. I have the talent tree, but fourth senior brother doesn't. In other words, no matter what kind of method his Honor used, fourth senior brother has already been affected. Not only fourth senior brother was affected, Tan Sheng and Xia Liang were affected as well. I have to be a bit more careful when I go back. If my performance is different from fourth senior brother and the others, it is very likely that I will be exposed. Just when he was thinking about this, suddenly, footsteps sounded out, and soon after, someone said, "Brother Zhou, I heard that Li Baxian is here?" Zhou Yuntian, who was left behind to guard the talent tree, said with a smile, "You guys sure are well informed. We have just returned and you guys have already heard about it?" The person who spoke said, "Brother Zhao, did you guys say that Li Baxian is here? Isn't that right?" The next moment, Lu Yi felt a lot of people gather around him, and one after another, voices rang out. "It really is Li Baxian. Brother Zhou has made a great contribution this time. Being able to gather such a talent for his honor, he will definitely be rewarded. It is our honor to be able to serve his honor. There is no need for any reward." "Yes, yes, yes. But I heard that Li Baxian is only at the 5th order Cloud River realm now. Isn't his cultivation a bit low?" "Low cultivation doesn't mean anything right now. He is Li Baxian. If he is allowed to grow to the 9th order, none of us will be his opponent." Chapter 573. Lu Yi had long known of his 4th senior brother's fame, and this time he truly felt it. Strictly speaking, they were now considered captives, but even so, Li Baxian's arrival had attracted many cultivators who had heard of him for a long time. In contrast, Tan Sheng and Xiao Liang, whose cultivation bases were higher than Li Baxian's, were ignored. The group chattered for a long time before Zhou Yuntian said, all right, his honor has already planted a secret technique in them, so they'll all be on the same side in the future. There will be plenty of opportunities to communicate, so let's disperse." The noisy crowd left one after another. Zhou Yuntian closed the door and quietly guarded the room. Only the steady breathing of the unconscious cultivators could be heard in the room. Various thoughts flashed through Lu Ye's mind. Judging from his honor's actions and the meaning of Zhou Yuntian's words, his honor had indeed planted some kind of secret technique on them. He more or less understood how his honor had controlled these cultivators. It was because of that unique secret technique. Thinking back to what he had felt before, Lu Yi was shocked because from what he had felt just now, the secret technique his honor had used was very likely related to the soul. When his honor had used the secret technique, he had felt some impact on his mind, and many inexplicable things had appeared in his mind. However, because his innate skill tree could burn things that had invaded his body and were harmful to him, he was not affected by the secret technique, which made it difficult for him to detect the specific effects of the secret technique. But, a secret technique of the soul. Was that possible? That was a skill that could only be performed by Spirit Sea Realm cultivators. Only those who had reached the Spirit Sea Realm were qualified to use things related to the spirit. Everyone had a soul, and as their cultivation increased, their soul would also grow stronger. However, before reaching the Divine Sea Realm, cultivators were unable to actively use the power of their soul, let alone use a secret technique of the soul. Take Lu Yi for example. Because he had refined a lot of soul-cleansing water, his soul was much stronger than cultivators of the same cultivation level, so his mind was more stable. When faced with situations that impacted his mind or soul, he had a natural advantage. For example, if an ordinary Cloud River tier cultivator were to die in the Mirage Realm, they would definitely have a headache for 1 or 2 days. However, Lu Yi would recover very quickly. This was the benefit of having a powerful soul, but even so, he did not have the ability to activate his own soul power. His cultivation base was still far from that level. However, his honor was able to use a divine soul secret technique. It was also because of that soul secret technique that Her Excellency was able to control so many cultivators under her command, making those cultivators treat her with great respect and even worship her. Lu Yi was getting more and more curious about the identity of the Venerable One. Could it be that some divine ocean realm cultivator had forced his way into the Cloudy River battlefield? But that didn't seem right either. On the Spirit Stream battlefield, powerful cultivators could use their merit points to force their way in. He had never heard of such a thing happening on the Cloud River battlefield. The cultivators who could enter the Cloudy River battlefield had always been at the Cloudy River tier. Furthermore, even if a Divine Sea Realm cultivator were to force their way into the Cloud River battlefield, they would still be suppressed by the balance of the heavens. If they were to move here, they would not be able to use the soul secret technique. More importantly, why would a divine sea realm cultivator come here and use the soul secret technique to control a group of cloudy river tier cultivators? It couldn't be a child's play. Thinking about it this way, Lu Yi felt that the Venerable One was most likely not a divine sea realm cultivator. The more he thought about it, the more he did not understand. Lu Yi simply stopped thinking about it. He was in an awkward situation. He could use his talent tree to dispel the effects of the soul secret technique, but his fourth senior brother could not. Now that he was trapped here, although there was no danger for the time being, the Venerable One had gathered so many cultivators under her command. Her scheme was definitely not small. Who knew when danger would descend? He made up his mind. He definitely could not reveal that he had dispelled the soul secret technique. Otherwise, he would definitely die. He waited quietly. About 2 hours later, the people around him woke up one after another and sat up. Lu Yi also opened his eyes and sat up straight. Just as he was about to observe the reaction of his fourth senior brother and imitate him, he suddenly felt an impact of spiritual energy, followed by the sound of swords. Accompanied by the shouts of Tan Sheng and Xia Liang, the scene instantly became a mess. It was Li Baxian who saw Tan Sheng and Xia Liang next to him and brazenly attacked. Lu Yi also hurriedly pulled out his mountain-coiling saber. Spiritual power surged around his body and flames wrapped around the saber. Stop! Zhou Yuntian, who had been guarding here all this time, had a change in expression. He rushed over in a flash, his powerful ninth order cultivation clearly displayed. The four figures were all pushed aside. Zhou Yuntian's face was filled with anger. He looked around at the four people who were hostile to each other and coldly said, "I don't care what kind of deep grudges you have before, nor do I care which camp you come from. Since you are here, you are family from now on. Don't mention any grievances." When he first appeared, he also said something similar, but at that time, no one took his words seriously. Now that he said it again, Lu Yi naturally ignored him. But when he looked at Xia Liang and Tan Sheng's pale faces, he found that they both had awkward expressions. Turning his head, even Li Baxian's brow furrowed. Zhou Yuntian coldly said, "What senior hates the most is to see his own family fight. This is the first time. You didn't understand the rules, so that's understandable, but if you do it again, there will be no mercy." Pausing for a moment, he shouted, "These are the rules set by senior. Everyone must abide by them." As soon as these words came out, Tan Sheng and Xia Liang both showed looks of panic. Withdrawing their auras, they lowered their heads slightly. Yes. Li Baxian also put away his flying sword and nodded, "Understood." The words senior seemed to have some kind of magical power to them at this moment, making them obedient. Zhou Yuntian coldly said, "Since you understand, then make peace. I hope you can really coexist like brothers in the future." Xia Liang was silent for a moment before cupping his fists to Lu Yi and Li Baxian. "I have offended you many times before, please forgive me." Li Baxian politely returned the gesture. "Brother Xia is too serious. There is no need to mention the past. In the future, we will all be subordinates of senior, so I hope Brother Xia and Brother Tan can take care of us." Of course. Lu Yi stood to the side and watched coldly with a heavy heart. Only now did he realize how terrifying that soul secret technique was. No matter what it was enough to distort a person's mind. Zhou Yuntian smiled and nodded with satisfaction. "That's right. Since you are here, you will be a family from now on, a family. Come with me, senior wants to see you, but before that, you have to wash up and change your clothes." Saying so, he turned around and left. Lu Yi and the others quickly followed. Walking out of the house, Lu Yi looked around and saw that this place should be a valley. The scenery was not as beautiful as Return to Heaven Valley, and the area was not large. However, there were all kinds of buildings in the valley, and there were many traces of cultivators coming and going. The climate in the valley was pleasant, and there were many peach trees planted here. At this time, it was the season of peach blossoms, and pink peach blossoms were in full bloom, filling the air with the fragrance of peach blossoms. As Zhou Yuntian walked forward, they met cultivators from time to time, and some of them even curiously looked at Lu Yi and the others. After walking for a short while, they arrived in front of a pool. The water in the pool was flowing, so clear that one could see the bottom. Under Zhou Yuntian's instructions, the four took off their clothes and entered the pool to wash their bodies. Lu Yi never expected that the four people who were fighting to the death before would be happily living together in the same pool. Moreover, Li Baxian, Tan Sheng, and Xia Liang were talking and laughing, as if everything that happened before was just a misunderstanding. Tan Sheng and Xia Liang's injuries were very serious. After all, they were besieged by a pack of wolves and were able to survive because they were strong enough. In the end, if they had not escaped in time, they would have died in the spiritual land. Not long after, the four finished bathing and put on their clothes. Lu Yi and Li Baxian looked refreshed while Xia Liang and Tan Sheng's faces were still pale. The injuries the two of them had suffered before would not be healed without a period of recuperation. Everything was ready, and under Zhou Yuntian's lead, they went deeper into the valley. They stopped in front of a large hall. There was a woman standing quietly at the entrance of the hall. She was tall and beautiful, and her beautiful eyes were as bright as the stars. Her gaze swept across Lu Yi and the others, and soon fixed on Li Baxian. She pursed her lips and smiled. "Is he Li Baxian?" Zhou Yuntian smiled and replied, "Yes, he is Li Baxian." The woman looked at Li Baxian from head to toe and nodded slightly, just like the rumors, handsome and dignified. Li Baxian smiled and bowed. "Fellow Taoist is too kind." The woman covered her mouth and smiled. "I thought Li Baxian was an arrogant and cold person, but I misunderstood. Fellow Taoist Li, I am also a sword cultivator. If you have time, I would like to ask fellow Taoist Li for advice." Li Baxian said, "I wouldn't dare to give advice. Fellow Taoist cultivation is far above mine. You should be the one giving me advice." The woman wanted to say something, but Zhou Yuntian coughed lightly. "Junior Sister Yu, His Excellency is waiting for them." The woman surnamed Yu's expression immediately became serious, and she moved aside. "Bring them in." Zhou Yuntian nodded slightly, and led Lu Yi and the others to the front of the hall, and shouted, "Zhou Yuntian requests an audience with His Excellency. I have brought the newcomers. Come in." His Excellency's unique, lazy voice came from inside the hall. Only then did Zhou Yuntian step forward and push open the door, and led Lu Yi and the others into the hall. As soon as they entered the hall, the tip of their nose smelled a unique and intoxicating fragrance. The furnishings in the hall were pink, and even the interior of the hall was filled with a pink aura, giving off a hazy and ambiguous feeling. At the top of the hall, there was a low couch. On the low couch, a graceful figure was lazily lying on her side. Beside her, there were a few women who were either squatting or standing. Some were gently fanning her with a fan, some were massaging her legs and shoulders, and some were peeling berries and feeding them to her. The figure lying on the low couch was undoubtedly His Excellency. Chapter 574. In the main hall, Zhou Yuntian led Lu Ye's group forward and stood 5 meters away from the couch. He lowered his head and said respectfully, "Zhou Yundan greets Senior, the newcomer has been brought." Saying so, he turned his head and gave Lu Ye's group a meaningful glance. Li Baxian and the other two hurriedly cupped their fists and saluted. Lu Yi also followed suit and said in unison, "Greetings, Senior." The lazy voice sounded again. Lu Yi secretly raised his eyes to look, and when he saw who it was, he couldn't help but be stunned. Although this senior had appeared in the mountain forest before, there was a curtain separating them at that time, so Lu Yi didn't know what the other party looked like. He only knew that the other party was a woman. At this moment, without the curtain separating them, he could naturally see the other party's face clearly. To be honest, since cultivating until now, Lu Yi had seen many women, and many of them had outstanding appearances. Among female cultivators, there were no particularly ugly ones. Most of them had delicate features. At the very least, they were of average appearance, and there were also quite a few who were peerless beauties. The main reason was naturally that cultivators had spirit qi, which could preserve their beauty. But Lu Yi had never seen such a beautiful face. There was almost no flaw on that face, It was so perfect that it didn't seem to belong to this world. It wasn't that kind of flawless beauty, but a kind of indescribable flirtatiousness. Especially the small mole under the corner of the other party's eye, it added a different kind of charm. Such a face undoubtedly had a great visual impact on the men in the world. Coupled with the extremely revealing clothes on the upper body, a large amount of snow-white skin was exposed. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was offensive to public morals, and it made people's blood boil. This kind of appearance, this kind of figure, even if she didn't rely on the mysterious soul secret technique, she was qualified to control most men in the world, making them willing to sell their lives for her. What made Lu Yi particularly concerned was not her appearance, but the aura coming from her body. He had already felt that the aura of this senior was a little strange before, and now it was even clearer. The power flowing in her body was not the same as normal spirit qi. It was more like demonic qi. Lu Yi and Hoopa spent a lot of time together, so his perception of demonic qi was still very sharp. If that's the case, then this His Honor isn't a human, but a demon? Moreover, she was definitely one of those demonic beasts that possessed some special abilities. Otherwise, there was no reason for her to be able to unleash a secret technique that could control a cultivator's divine sense as a Cloud River tier cultivator. This explained everything. Orthodox cultivators didn't have the ability to use divine sense secret techniques in the Cloud River tier, but beasts were different. Some powerful beasts were born with abilities that ordinary people couldn't match. As if sensing Lu Ye's gaze, His Honor's bewitching beautiful eyes swept over. When His Honor's eyes met Lu Ye's eyes, the corners of His Honor's mouth slightly curled up and revealed a playful smile. She had seen such gazes many times before, so she was not surprised, but Lu Ye's boldness did surprise her. Because of her soul secret technique, basically everyone who saw her for the first time would be in awe. Even a cultivator like Zhou Yuntian, who had followed her for many years, only dared to sneak a peek at her occasionally. He had never dared to stare at her so openly. Lu Yi was the first person to stare at her like this during their first meeting. When their eyes met, Lu Ye's expression suddenly changed, because His Honor's pair of beautiful eyes gave him a feeling that they had turned into a bottomless abyss, causing his consciousness to sink uncontrollably. Shocked, Lu Yi hurriedly lowered his head. Oh! His Honor let out a surprised sound. She was a little surprised that Lu Yi could escape her gaze. She originally wanted to teach Lu Yi a little lesson, but she didn't expect that Lu Ye's mind was strong because of this. However, this was a good thing for her. The stronger the cultivators under her command were, the more power she could borrow. After giving Lu Yi a deep look, she no longer paid any attention to him. "Everyone, introduce yourselves," His Honor said lazily. Zhou Yuntian whispered from the side. "His Honor wants to understand your strength. If you have any special abilities, tell her everything. Don't hide anything. Brother Xia, let's start with you." Xia Liang immediately cupped his fists and shouted, "Wild Blade Sex Xia Liang, 9th Order Cloud River Realm, Armament Cultivator. As for special abilities, this Xia's heart is the saber. I have no other abilities." Zhou Yuntian explained, "His Honor, Wild Blade Sect is a first-grade sect. Brother Xia was once in the top 10 of the Spirit Stream list. His 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivation isn't something an ordinary 9th Order Realm cultivator can compare to." "Correct," His Honor said indifferently. Zhou Yuntian reminded, "Brother Tan." Tan Xing hurriedly said, "New Moon Sect's Tan Xing, 9th Order Cloud River Realm, Armament Cultivator." Zhou Yuntian continued, "Brother Tan was once in the Spirit Stream list. New Moon Sect is a third-grade sect. In the entire 9 continents, it can be considered a big sect." His Honor didn't say anything. Obviously, he wasn't as interested in Tan Xing as Xia Liang. When it was Li Baxian's turn, he said, "Pill Heart Sex Li Baxian, 5th Order Cloud River Realm, Sword Cultivator." Zhou Yuntian said, "In the Spirit Stream battlefield, Li Baxian was a legendary figure. He was also the only person who was able to occupy the top 10 of the Spirit Stream list with a Heaven 8th Order cultivation for more than 10 years. I heard that Brother Li's spirit aperture was broken in a fight with someone. Now that he has reached the Cloud River realm, Brother Li's spirit aperture must have been repaired, right? Yes. Fortunately, little junior brother spent a huge amount of money to buy an aperture supplement pill. The broken spirit aperture has been repaired. Congratulations. His honor, although Brother Li's current cultivation isn't high, in terms of potential, none of us can compare to him. Furthermore, he is a sword cultivator. If he can reach the 9th Order Cloud River realm in the future, he will definitely be a first-class master. Very good. His honor's voice was filled with joy. When you return, give him some cultivation items. Let him cultivate well and work hard to improve his cultivation. Zhou Yuntian immediately turned to Li Baxin. Why aren't you thanking his honor for the reward? Li Baxin immediately said, Thank you, honor. Zhou Yuntian looked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi also cupped his fists and said, Blue blood sex Lu Yi, 4th Order Cloud River Realm, weapon cultivator. After a pause, he said, Subordinate is proficient in the Tao of Spirit Runes, the Tao of Spirit Arrays, and also knows a thing or two about the Tao of Spirit Runes. Zhou Yuntian had said before that if Lu Yi had any special skills, he should tell him everything and not hide anything. Although Lu Yi didn't want to say these things were known to everyone, including Xia Liang and Tan Sheng. So, even if he didn't want to, he had to say it to avoid any clues. Zhou Yuntian was stunned. Brother Lu has cultivated so many sects? I have dabbled a little, Lu Yi said modestly. Amazing, amazing. Zhou Yuntian revealed a happy look. Honor, we are lacking such talents right now, especially in the Tao of Spirit Arrays. Brother Xie has been complaining that he doesn't have anyone he can use. I think we can send Brother Lu to Brother Xie's side to assist him. You can decide on this matter yourself, there is no need to ask me, his honor replied faintly. Yes. I'm tired, all of you can leave, his honor waved his hand. Zhou Yuntian immediately said respectfully, Subordinate will take his leave. After saying this, he gave Lu Yi and the others a look, led them to bow and leave. After leaving the main hall, they followed Zhou Yuntian and soon arrived at the side of the valley. There were many loft-like buildings standing there, and the distance between each building was about 100 feet. In total, there were about 100 or so buildings. Zhou Yuntian said, Fellow Taoists, choose your own residence. In the future, everyone will be staying in Immortal Fox Valley. We are all family, so there is no need to be too reserved. There is only one thing that everyone needs to remember. Speaking up to here, his expression became extremely serious, and his voice also became low. After entering Immortal Fox Valley, everyone will have to cut off their past. From now on, you are all people of Immortal Fox Valley. Don't contact your masters and friends anymore, and you are not allowed to reveal the existence of Immortal Fox Valley to outsiders. If there is anyone who violates this order, kill without mercy. Lu Yi and the others nodded, indicating that they understood. Apart from this, there are no rules in Immortal Fox Valley. Apart from going out to recruit talents, there is basically nothing else to do. If you want to cultivate, then cultivate. He raised his hand and pointed at the lofts. The doors on the 2nd floor are closed, and they are all occupied. The doors are wide open, and they are all unoccupied. Feel free to do as you please. After saying this, he exchanged battlefield marks with Lu Yi and the others, telling them to contact him if there was anything, and then left. After Zhou Yuntian left, Tan Sheng and Xia Liang went together to find their own residence. Lu Yi and Li Baxin also went in the same direction. Along the way, Lu Yi observed Li Baxin's expression and found that he looked normal, and there was no sign of anything wrong. He tentatively said, Fourth senior brother. What about senior sister Feng? Zhou Yuntian said before that since they entered this Immortal Fox Valley, they must cut off all ties with their past, and they must not reveal the existence of this place to anyone. Li Baxin and Feng Yuechan were childhood sweethearts, and they had been cultivating and living together for so many years. Suddenly being brought here and having to cut off all ties with their past, Lu Yi wanted to know what choice Li Baxin would make. Hearing this, Li Baxin sighed. Since His Excellency has given the order, then we can only obey. Yuan, Although she will be sad, she will be fine after a long time. Lu Ye's heart turned cold, but he still said, "That's true." He raised his hand and pointed at the two lofts in front of them. "Senior brother, let's choose these two. You and I live closer, and it will be easier for us to look after each other." Li Baxin nodded happily. "Okay." Then, the two of them each chose a loft. Lu Yi chose a loft on the right, and after walking in and looking around, he found that there were traces of people living here, and there were even some things left behind. However, the original owner should not have returned for a long time, as the loft was covered in dust. He didn't know what the situation of the original owner of this loft was, but from the current situation, the original owner of this loft was most likely dead, otherwise, they wouldn't have stayed away for so long. This so-called Immortal Fox Valley seemed to be peaceful, and everyone lived in harmony. Under His Excellency's sole secret technique, everyone was able to unite as one, but now, it seemed that this place was not so safe. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.